Welcome to the Conjugate Dad Podcast with your host, Justin Komondoreas and Dave Chase. In episode 1, Justin and Dave talk about Justin's journey from a young high school football player to a very successful online strength coach.
Welcome to the very first official Conjugate Dad podcast. That is, of course, sponsored by Common Athlete Performance Coaching. You can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and even YouTube. This is something that I have personally thought about for a while, and I have been somewhat pushed into creating from quite a few people, my wife included, as far as making a podcast. And I always felt like, not sounding like conceited or anything, but I have like a unique perspective on certain things. And so I thought maybe people would find that entertaining. If they don't, this is just going to be therapy for me to be able to get on here and just let some stuff out, but talk about the topics that are in the fitness industry that either drive me nuts or drive Dave nuts. We're just going to have a huge list of things to discuss on here. I'm going to try my best to keep it centered around, women's health and longevity, but generally speaking, we'll cover like men's topics too sometimes, but I want to really keep it as facing in what I do as possible. We have Dave here. He's going to be our producer of the Conjugate Dad podcast. Dave's been with me for 3 years, but we go back before that. We worked together at a company called 5-Star Nutrition, formerly Total Nutrition. And well, not directly together, from afar, but we were always aware of each other and we communicated on social media and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of led into just like a constant communication, because I feel like Dave has that same kind of craving for knowledge that I have. And so he wants to know why I program things a certain way, or why I eat a certain way, or why other people do things a certain way. And so that led to a lot of communication, just like generalized stuff, and then a lot of ideas. And we've done a lot of different things in the past. And so recently, I even mentioned just a minutia amount, the word podcast, and he immediately jumped to say, let's just do it and see what happens, because ultimately it's not like super expensive. It doesn't cost a ton of money to do this, and who knows what happens. It's just a platform for us normal people to be able to speak on topics that we want to speak on. So you have anything you want to add to that, Dave?
Yeah. So, definitely the first thing, excited to be not only part of the podcast, but when we talked about this, I kind of want to be the behind the glass person that's kind of handling less desirable positions of editing and, tossing in images and clips and what have you. But when you brought this to me and said, hey, like, I actually would love to do that if you can handle this sort of stuff. The software really isn't that hard. But for the people that are listening, I've been with Justin for 3 years. I'm the strongest I've ever been at 33, I think, and like a half years old. I just became my dad 7 months ago. So, it's definitely the most difficult time in my life. And Justin's got me through that, making sure that I'm still like incredibly strong, and like the motivation continues to go up, because now I have a son to live for, and definitely be like, we've had this conversation before, Justin, like, be a superhero for your kids. And I want to definitely be Superman, or Spider-Man was my favorite superhero growing up. I always called myself Peter, for Peter Parker, but I know we have the Miles Morales Spider-Man now. But just super excited to be a part of the show. Didn't really think I was going to be at the forefront of it. And I think that for the people listening, whether you're a current client, past client, prospective client, or just someone who loves like health and fitness and training, I think that the goal of this podcast is to have fun, get some knowledge out there, and help a lot of people. And hopefully, they'll get something out of it. I certainly am going to get everything out of it. I studied media comm for 7+ years, high school, undergrad, and then just doing it on my own time. So super pumped up. And I have 3 drinks here. I hope the show gets sponsored by Gatorade or Sprite Zero at some point. If not, that's fine. Gatorade.
That's Sprite Zero. That's not regular sugar.
Sprite,
Okay.
Sprite Zero Sugar.
Acceptable.
Gatorade Zero. If you don't like purple, I don't like you. Pretty like similar stuff. We have a co-host as well, Mojo Dojo. My wife knitted this. So yeah, he's going to be joining us for most episodes.
So, like now we can't do an episode about artificial sweeteners.
Well, we can't. I mean, I will die on that hill that you can have as many diet sodas as you want. We can pull up the research. We can be really nerdy about it. Or you can just tell me to go fuck myself, and then we won't be able to do any artificial sweetener. That's fine either way, whatever you want.
Fair enough. I mean, to each their own. Like, everybody's got their vice, right? So I think, with Dave, initially, when we first started talking about this, like, his mindset was, he wants to be like, the behind the scenes guy that's pulling up the information and kind of preparing things and cutting things up and adding graphics and all that kind of stuff. And for me, I can definitely like do this thing on my own and just sit here and talk to myself, but I'm so much more interactive when I have somebody with me. And it kind of puts my brain in a place where I can just accelerate the things that I'm saying and get that information out a lot faster. So there's not a lot of dead spots when I'm trying to communicate something because, depending on when we record this, if it's in the afternoon, that might be a time when we're a little bit more slow than we would be in the morning. So maybe we should record in the mornings. I don't know. But in any event, I'm excited to have him on here. I think one of the other things that we kind of discussed was that, with using this platform, we would like to have it be a video style podcast along with a audio style podcast. So eventually we're going to try and get this on like Spotify or wherever we can get this on. But initially we'll have it on YouTube. So what he will be doing is if we need to kind of default to AI or Google, he can search some things up, kind of like Jamie does on JRE podcast, and pull up that information fast so we can get the answer as fast as possible in case we do like Q&A, because I think Q&A is great for having just discussion around like, what people want to know or what questions they have about what we do at Common Athlete or just like training in general.
And Justin, I think you can actually do like a live audience on here, and if not, we can just have that Q&A posted to our socials.
Yeah, I can get as many questions as I need to. So, so the topic today is really just like, I want to just do kind of a brief background for me and how we got into this. And then I know Dave has some questions for me specifically that he wants the answer to, some different things to discuss. If we have a little bit of time, I want to take maybe like a 5 or 10 minute segment and just have a discussion that's built around ownership and what I see as one of the biggest problems in our country right now in terms of leadership and ownership, and how I feel like the average person can make things better for themselves. I know that the previous company that we worked for, we did a very exclusive, daunting leadership course that expanded, the course of maybe like 2 years. Dave, you were around for Extreme Ownership and all that stuff, and we had to read that. And
I got my books. I was going to put my books behind to make it show how smart I am. But...
Yeah. I have all mine to the side. I just don't have a shelf behind me, so I might have to switch up the position.
My video production professor, if he ever sees this, is banging in the wall right now.
Yeah.
Blank wall. He's losing his freaking mind right now.
Yeah. So, when we were working with 5 Star, we had to do like we had to go to these different symposiums and that were just built around like leadership and extreme ownership, the book by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And I think there was 3 or 4 different books that we actually had to read and be tested on. And we had all these packets, and not everybody grasped that concept of what it means to take control of your own life and to how discipline equals freedom and how leadership is important, but more specifically taking ownership of the things that you can take ownership of. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here because I know we're going to kind of get into my background, but that's something that we can kind of real quick discuss at the end for sure.
Yeah.
Did you want to start with your questions first, or do you want me to just kind of dive in?
I think that most of the people that will listen to this may already have some knowledge of what you are now in the year 2025, but I think because I'm the most annoying client you ever had, I probably know almost everything there is to know about you that you're willing to share with another human being that isn't your wife. So I would love for you to tell that story, and I kind of want to start in the way beginning of like, you're 8 or 9 years old or whatever, the first time you picked up a weight. Like, why did you start in the first place? Like, what event happened? What age was that? And like, then we can kind of work through all the way to Justin now at 40 something years old.
Yeah, I think you're you're gonna make me dig in my brain a little bit here, but
Yeah.
I can remember, sports playing, backyard football and baseball and basketball and all the things. Like my parents, I should say, they set me up for like whatever it was I wanted to do. If I wanted to race BMX bikes, if I wanted a mountain bike, if I wanted, I remember the first pair of inline skates that I had that were made by Rollerblade, the company that had the yellow wheels and the brake on the back of them. And we would play street hockey with a lacrosse ball. Like we'd get the nets, my dad freaking built me out of black PVC pipe and made the nets himself. Like he went and did all that stuff just so we had it and all the neighborhood kids could come play in the street in front of our house. And then that led to BMX, and then that was always kind of like like the side quest was BMX, and then I should say aggressive inline, where the ramps and the grinding rails and curbs and all that stuff, and then that shifted over to BMX. 10, 11, 12 years old. We had a spot in the back of the neighborhood where there was just this big open property, and one of my close friends growing up, like we went out and built jumps.
Florida.
In Florida. Yeah, in Florida. All of this is in Florida. And that, was 6th grade to 10th grade. But the weights came in when, because football was always there. Like we always played catch, we always did the things, but it didn't become serious until 6th grade, which is when the doctors were like 6th grade is a good age to start like playing full contact football.
Yeah.
And so from there, we always had a couple dumbbells at the house. We always had, like a curl bar, like the old school standard with the spin on clip on the side and the standard 1-inch plates and all that kind of stuff. And we would play around with that. But my dad never forced it on me. My parents never forced it on me. It was more of like, if you want to do it, cool, let's do it, but let's be about it.
Were they into weightlifting themselves? Like, did you see your parents like working out?
My mom wasn't. My dad was. He played sports, but he really picked up weightlifting in the military. So he was in the Army. He went to Vietnam and built bridges, Corps of Engineers, and then Korea, Thailand, all these different places where he saw all the different martial arts, and so that kind of rubbed off on me, along with Van Damme movies and Bruce Lee and all that kind of stuff. So naturally, it was like football, and then in the off season, I did Kempo for 3 years and got up to like I think it was either like a purple or a green belt in Kempo karate. Did competitions, won all the competitions that I went into. Always had to spar against kids that were older than me. Like that kind of stuff always just was super natural for me. And I would say probably around 10 to 11 years old is when we got a membership at the YMCA in Lake Mary, Florida. And that's when my dad started to take me pretty regularly to the Y to work out. And he was pretty avid in training too. So like I remember him doing a couple of bench press competitions just for like the fun of it. But he wasn't like great genes, but he never was like a big guy. You know what I mean? Like he didn't do anything because my parents were so consumed in providing that he didn't really have the time. Plus he loved motorcycles. Motorcycles and cars was his thing. So his side quest was, like weightlifting or whatever it was that I was doing.
It is like relative though too. I mean, because like I would consider you and I big in the 30s, 240s, 250s area for like the size, like being 5'10", and I think you said you're 6 flat, right?
It's like 6'1", yeah, something like that.
Big, but then like I'm guessing when your dad was like growing up, like big then is like 185, 200. Like
yeah, so that's exactly it. Yeah, so like, but genetically speaking,
But like maybe during the times that was considered like bigger, maybe.
Yeah. I think genetically speaking, like you would look at my dad at the time and say that, he was a fit guy.
Yeah.
I mean, has massive hands. Like, for our height, like we have long arms, big hands, big feet, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, genetics played a role in that.
Well, and you work with things too, and you do when you're a handy person, you're like musicians and like athletes, like their hands get bigger because they're always handling.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
right? And when you do like carries and stuff, I mean, all this stuff.
Yes, and my dad and even my brother, they're very much like jack of all trades. So like they can do just about anything. But so like anything that I did, like sports wise or whatever, like my dad and even my brother wanted to be involved. So if like I had rollerblades, he had rollerblades. I had a bike, they had bikes.
That's awesome.
Football, they wanted to play
About the
football, like
same
all that kind of
experience in
stuff.
the Chase household, I will say.
Yeah, for sure.
Go do it. Go do it.
For sure. So that's when kind of I first started picking up weights, and then as I got into high school, and I was a 165-pound freshman on freshman football team, and played both ways, all that kind of stuff. But I was a lean, skinny kid. I didn't get much taller in high school than from where I was from a freshman to a senior, like maybe an inch or two. But I went from 165 to 230 my senior year. And a lot of that was, I would say all of that was just built around my parents' commitment to providing me with whatever I needed to be successful with what I wanted to do. And the minute I said college football was the minute that everything else stops, and this is what you're gonna commit to doing. And if that's what you want, and they knew it truly was what I wanted. My dad would go. I should say my parents would go to no ends to find out, like, what are the best things that he needs to do, and they didn't know, like they don't know like you and I know, right? Like, so
Is
in,
this? And
this is so like you're talking about 1999 to 2001.
I mean, who do you go to in the Y2K era to
Back
like
then,
jack?
it was bodybuilders, the bodybuilders that were trainers. Like they didn't. It wasn't what it is now. Isn't anywhere near what it was back then in terms of like knowledge. Like even in that time frame, a lot of people didn't even know who Louis Simmons was. He was just starting to kind of kick the dirt up
Yeah.
in the powerlifting world. My high school coach was really big on weightlifting. So you were going to, in the off season, you were going to be on the weightlifting team, you were going to run track, or you were going to wrestle. Like those were the three things that you had, that was your options, or basketball. But he was, and I agree, he was one of those people that if you play basketball, you're taking a risk because the ankles, and your knees, which I agreed with. I felt like if your main focus is football, like you need to do things that bring that up. And
Sure.
yes, jumping does enhance football, but at the same time, like basketball isn't like on that velocity spectrum, right? It's super at like high velocity. So you're jumping with just your body weight, right? Versus like the more you go up in the power spectrum, because football is a power sport, the more weightlifting becomes more important, the cleans and the jumps and all that stuff. So I mainly did all that work at school, but then I was so obsessive with it that I had my parents buy me a bench squat rack, and they stuck it in like the dining room. So it wasn't even in the garage, it was in the dining room on the carpet.
Son, get your bench press set and come eat this meatballs and pasta.
Yeah, exactly. And my dad's like 50% Greek, 50% Italian, so that was a lot of the foods that we were eating.
Yeah.
But whether it was mass gainers, creatines, proteins, you're going to do this, you're going to be on it. And I just got obsessed with it. Like the practice of preparation for the sport, and then seeing what that created and what that led to. The bigger and stronger and more explosive I got, the less I got bullied, all of those different things. But it was really the transference of all that to sport that was the most impactful for me. Because I remember the fastest 40 that I ran in high school was, I think I ran like a 4.58, and I was about 215. And back then, that was a great time for somebody that weighed 200. And I can remember finishing my senior year, I benched I benched 400 my senior year, and my power clean was 315. And I don't quite remember what my squat was. It probably wasn't that great, maybe like 4 something, but I was never a great squatter. But
400 at 18
yeah,
years. Yep, sure.
but
Relative.
so that kind of led me to, I did weightlifting team. That was what was my pick because I thought that was the cool thing to do. So
It's badass. Out of my high school.
Yeah. So, well, in Florida, the weightlifting team was bench with the pause and clean and jerk. That was it. So there's no snatch, no deadlift, no squat. It was, which is why you saw most athletes gravitate towards that because those are like really athletic movements that kind of aid in football, things that people want to see. So I did really good. I think my senior year, I was like 5th in states in the 238 weight class. But when you get to that level in Florida, there's monsters like that you wouldn't believe. Like, imagine being a 16-year-old kid, a sophomore, and I was at the time I was in I want to say, so it went 198, 219, 238. So I had to be in the 198 weight class. Maybe it was 202, but there was a guy from a high school called Spruce Creek, which is out by the beach and like Daytona Beach area. And I remember looking at this guy, and he had taken his singlet off, and like his belly was like muscle out to, like, he just had that turtle shell ab look.
I'm about to get messed up.
Yeah, and this dude, his first attempt was like 420 in the 198, and I'm like, how, like, I'm 16, this guy's 18, like, how is this even possible? And the heavyweights were doing 500 plus. Remember, this is Florida, so this is like freak zone.
I mean, are you going up against, like, I know, like, IMG Academy, like, I like listening to
IMG didn't exist back then.
Well, no, I meant like that kind of caliber where, like,
yeah, so it was
there last year, like all the great football players.
So for weightlifting, there was only 2 classifications, 2A and 1A. So 1A was all the privates, and then 2A was like all the public schools.
Okay, you're
in football, it goes all the way up to, at that time it was 6A. We were 6A, so like my grad class was like over 1,000. We had a huge high school.
But of course, so name being K, like your parents are just hating it when you graduate. Like, just like,
yeah. So you're seeing at that level, like, all the freaks. And for me, being a young, impressionable teenager at that point, you want to do what those guys are doing, right? You want to be at that level. And but a lot of those guys didn't play football. They were weightlifters. Like, their clean and jerks were pristine form versus like mine was just like a yoke it up power clean with a press overhead. It was not, we didn't have a great Olympic coach. Like, our coach was very like power because we ran wing T and we had a beast defense. So anyways, that kind of led me to go down that road of like, I just want to be as jacked and as strong as possible. And when I saw how my speed, but also strength, could carry over to football, I'm jacking up guys that are way bigger than me, right? And that just drove me more to be obsessed with being as big, as strong as possible. And then as I got into my senior year, you have all the accolades of like, this guy's going to be all everything and get recruited and all these different things. And I would say my senior year, and it's always hard for me to admit, but I kind of coasted. I didn't do as good as I did my junior year, even though I was bigger, stronger, faster. And that obviously led to less opportunities because I played defensive end and I was only 6'1" and only weighed 235. That was the stage in the NCAA where they weren't recruiting guys that were tweeners anymore because they had done it for so often. And those guys, they would recruit, like, for instance, University of Florida told my coach, and I remember to this day, we don't recruit guys that play defensive end that are one and hope that they get to be 6'3", 6'4" in college, because a lot of times it doesn't happen. Well, it definitely didn't happen for me. I had a couple of offers, but they were not offers that I liked. I had a full Division II. I had a half for the school that I ended up at anyways later on. I had a couple of like FCS offers, but I just did not feel comfortable with going to those schools. And so I ended up going the route of junior college for 1 year. Junior college led me to Cochran, Georgia, which at the time was Middle Georgia College. I think it's a state college now, or even a university, but it was the smallest school that you could imagine. There was like 500 people there in the middle of nowhere. You drive through cotton fields to get there. There's a bunch of plantations. All that stuff is still there too, I think. But it was a eye-opening experience for me. Number one, because you couldn't go into that situation and not learn how to be tough, because there was just a ton of tension in that school, and the tension came from the people that were there. So you've got the most ridiculous, sickest athletes that you can imagine from the state of Georgia, the state of Florida, all Tennessee, all California, all in that area, that have no grades, right? So they're not qualifiers. Their SATs were awful. So they go to junior college, and then they can kind of outright that bad test score or that 1.7 GPA. And if they get their AA, they can go to any school that they want. Well, you take me, and I'm from a situation where we had our population, you could say, was like 50-50. 50-50 white, and then 50% was Hispanic, African American, Indian. And I get to Middle Georgia, and that percent is now I'm the minority. So not that matters at all, because it didn't, but it created this level of intensity for me, and a level of toughness that you couldn't go through that and not get tough, because every day at practice was on a dirt field, and there's fights every single day. People are swinging helmets at each other with other people that don't have their helmets on either.
A while.
Brawls like every day. So I'm sure you watched that show Last Chance U on Netflix.
I've seen a few clips.
You'll have to watch it to get an understanding of where this is coming from for me.
Yeah.
So specifically, I believe it was Northwest Mississippi Junior College, I think, is the one that the first 2 seasons. That gives you an idea, but that's in 2014, 2015. We're talking about 2002. So
yeah.
I'm around these guys that are hardcore. They will break their neck for football. They don't care. And I hadn't really, you come from where you're the big fish in a decently sized pond. Now you're in the ocean with a bunch of sharks. It's you eat or you die. And so when I got there, and this is kind of always been the story of my life, and my dad's going to laugh because we just had this conversation, because I had never really talked to him about like the fullness of my experience in that 1 year at junior college. For sure.
Neither of my parents will listen to this podcast.
Well, they
like on a very positive note. Sorry, Justin.
Yeah, that's okay. So the point is you don't go through that experience and not just get tough skin, right? And this is when like I'm starting to mature and grow up, and I had to go through that to become who I am today. But we're peeling back all of the things that made me who I was at home, and becoming the person that I was going to become through that experience. And so going through all the things, seeing a lot of racial tension, which I had never really been experienced to before, because everybody was always so cool and tight knit. It didn't matter if you were white or black. Like, there was a ton of equality and friendships, and when you get to a place like that where the percentage is flipped, so now you're talking about 80% of the team is African American or Hispanic, and then 15 to 20% is Caucasian. Yeah. So I go up there, I've got bleached hair, like bleached white hair. I stand out like a sore thumb, but I always find a way to fit in. And so the whole experience, just the more I got into it, the deeper I went into it, the more hardcore it became. And so, like, just to give you an example, our defensive coordinator, his name was Coach Marcellus, and he was on the 1964 Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl team. And so he was as hardcore, old school as you can get. Just old school African-American, like, you're going to work hard. Like, he used to put us on the fence. We would hold the fence, and then we would just do high knees on the fence for 5 minutes to get in better shape.
You were
Not to mention,
pressing the fence, or you were up on top of the fence?
no, just pressing, holding onto the fence, but pressing against it, like just old school hardcore, like back in the what do they call that? The team from the Texas A&M team that had Bear Bryant, like the Boys of Summer or whatever that was.
The Boys
Boys of Fall, stuff like that, but in 2002. But we saw some. I saw some things. It was a difficult experience. Not to mention, I was changing position that I to play linebacker, and I had never played that position before. So I was a backup initially when we got out of fall camp. I was backup middle linebacker. I really just didn't know how to. I didn't know how to do that. So I played special teams, and I kept telling the coach, I'm like, hey, I can help on the edge. I can help on the edge. No, they were very much like, you're a prototypical middle linebacker. That's where you're going to be. And so I just had to.
You're playing the Mike. You're not playing.
Yeah, I'm playing Mike. Yeah, this is no edge stuff. I'm playing Mike.
Yeah, I'm saying you're not playing weak or other side.
Nope. Right. We ran a 4-4. Okay. So we had two middle linebackers, two outside linebackers stand up on the line of scrimmage, and then two bigger defensive tackles in the middle. Not to mention, the only people there that I knew was my high school quarterback, which his stepdad was the one that got me to go up there in the first place to even try out. And then the other defensive end that I played with in high school, but he redshirted, so he didn't have as big of a role in everything that was going on. And so I remember the eye-openingness of seeing these guys that are just so genetically gifted benching 450. I remember there was a guy that could jump up and touch his head on a 11-foot high ceiling in the dormitory, just like the 6'3", 250 pounds of just like insane genetic capacity, just athleticism for days. And that guy, I believe his name was Courtney. He had every major Division I, like, as soon as you graduate, you're signing, you're coming with us. Like, the scouts were all there to look at him all the time. Like, just an absolute sick athlete. And lucky for me, first game, he blew out his Achilles.
Oh, wow.
And so here I go, forced into
their little books, like writing shit down.
Yep. Pushed into this role that, I was like, okay, well, here we go. And so I was lucky in that the coach loved to blitz. So I didn't have a ton of responsibility. And the first game that I played in, I had 4 sacks. And it was against Georgia, which is now an FCS school.
Were you the signal caller too? No.
The other Mike linebacker was.
Yeah.
The other Mike linebacker was 26 years old, and this guy had he had to have a 3X helmet. He had the biggest head I've ever seen, but he was a 270-pound middle linebacker, like 6'2". His name was Johnny, and this dude was, he was a Mack truck.
Yeah.
But he couldn't stay healthy. And so I ended up having like an amazing year. I always played good, but it was always hard because the schools that were playing like Division II's JV teams. We played Air Force. We played their JV team. So a lot of people don't know that, like, Air Force, Navy, and Army have a JV team that they did then. They don't do it now. Freshmen, you can't redshirt at military academies now. Right. But back then they had a JV team that would travel, and they wouldn't lose eligibility by playing in these games. And I can remember playing Air Force, and they run that option, and it's just a bunch of like cop strong white boys that are all lean because you can't be 350 pounds and fly in an airplane. So that was an interesting experience. But to bring this thing to a head on Middle Georgia at the end of the season, and this is what really made this experience like a tough experience. They sat us all down in an auditorium and said, we're dropping the football team. And so in the midst of that, luckily for me, I was a qualifier. So I was able to attempt to find somewhere else to go where all these other guys had to stay another year and graduate without getting to play ball, unless they transferred to like Division II. I think Division II you could get in with like a 1.8 GPA. And if you're a talented athlete and you go to JUCO, you don't go to JUCO because you have good grades. Let's just leave it at that. Okay.
And you can still go to JUCO and do well. Like, I know Cam Newton was a JUCO athlete. I know Aaron Rodgers was, but like, I don't think either of those guys are not intelligent. So there's
a reason. There's always a reason.
putting in the effort,
Yeah, so like you're too small, or
Yeah.
you don't have the grades, or you're too slow. There's a reason why you have to go to junior college if you go. I did what I thought was the smartest thing, because once they cancel the football team, all the coaches are bouncing, right? Because they need to find another job. So I get all my film and I start emailing coaches, and the internet hasn't been around for that long, so this is like dial up and plugged
And
into the wall. And
three, I think it's
so I went through and got emails of all the Division One assistant coaches and head coaches and all that stuff, Division FCS, and then a couple of Division Two schools that I could have saw myself going to. And I just started emailing, and I would wait. I'd wait to hear back, and then I'd get some emails, and they were kind of like send your film. So I'd send film, but that became a waiting game, and I didn't like it. So then I started calling. But back then, this is going to sound crazy coming from me, but back then, I didn't like to talk to strangers on the phone. That was just like, I always used to make my mom call my teachers. Like and eventually like they forced me to do it. So I had to learn to start calling these people. So I would call late at night from like 10 to 1 a.m. and I would leave messages. Hey, this is so-and-so. This is my size. This is my 40. This is my stats. This is my school. And we were a well-known junior college. And so I just waited. And they would call back, and sometimes the guys in the dorm would prank call you and say, "Hey, this is Coach so and so from like," and you could tell they were playing games, prank calling or whatever. But I won't even get into the antics that took place at junior college. But this is just the process that I had to go through. I had to do it myself. And this is when I started to kind of learn about responsibility and taking ownership of, the things that you want to make happen in your own life. And so eventually I got some calls. I got some offers. I got offered from New Mexico Military Institute, which was a junior college, and they were offering me this really sweet package where I pretty much would have been able to sign the dotted lines to go play for, either New Mexico State, or like UNLV. The schools that were close kind of had like a hub deal with New Mexico Military, but I was not in the mentally prepared place to go to a military academy school. Plus, New Mexico Military is in Roswell. So weird place, super weird place. But I didn't take that visit. I had a couple other JUCO offers. I had a couple Division II offers. I had a couple halves for Division I. But the goal was always like, I can't, like my parents cannot pay for this. Like I cannot make them pay for another thing. And so I ended up getting back in contact with the school, Southeast Missouri, that offered me half in high school, and they offered me full. And the irony was the scholarship that I took was my center, the guy that played center for my high school, he got flunked out. And so his scholarship opened, and they gave me his scholarship. So kind of, patience paid off for me there. I ended up going to SEMO. I redshirt. I bounce around different positions. I never quite gave linebacker the full attention that it needed, because I was too concerned about just living the college life for the first year or two. But going into my senior year was when things got real, like really real. And I wanted to give it my all. And so that's where and this is prior, but I started working with a guy named John Davis, and he owned formerly Davis Training Systems, and then John Davis Coaching is what it is now. But he was the one that in 2002 exposed me to conjugate training. And so I really started training conjugate in 2002, but I really didn't do it year round. I only did it during Christmas break and during the summer. As I got into my senior year, instead of staying, normally what you did is you stayed back with the team and you trained with the team the whole summer. I stayed home for the whole summer and trained with him, which is the best thing that I could have ever done. But not only that, in the off season, I also, when I was at school, if we weren't doing the workout program through SEMO, me and my buddy Edgar, who went on to go to the NFL, we were doing conjugate style stuff in our extra time because somehow we could recover from that. So fast forward into my senior year, I have an awesome year. I was first team all conference, first team all region. I led the conference in sacks and tackles for loss. And, I was like one of the strongest people on the team too. So that all paid off for me. And I thought like for sure I was going to get at least an undrafted free agent type of opportunity. Last game of the season, head coach gets fired. So I find out I'm graduating, which I didn't think I was going to happen. I thought I was going to have another semester. So luckily I graduated, and I ended up going home after I graduated to prepare for the pro day. Well, what a lot of people don't know is like if there's a change in coaching staff on that level, on an FCS level, things get messed up. So that coaching staff that comes in, they don't care about the seniors that left, right?
You're not my problem.
So when coaches come in to watch film, or they come in to scout or whatever, or when it comes to prepping the pro day, there's nothing that kind of goes into that. And for me, the last class, the junior day is the same day as the pro day. So you get to run for the scouts as a junior going into a senior so they can get times recorded for you and stuff. We had like 20 scouts there because we had 2 or 3 guys that were either going to get drafted or be undrafted free agents. So it's not like we weren't on the map. Right. We were on the map on a low end. And so I went home and trained, and I came up to SEMO in like March for our pro day. That was still scheduled, and no scouts showed up.
Someone dropped the ball.
So they just didn't care, right? So like we had guys coming from Division I, from Division II, all over Missouri to do another pro day at our pro day. I remember I got there and they're all sitting in the office, and we all sat there for 2 hours waiting for scouts to show up, and they never showed up. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I don't have an agent. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. So again, you got to take ownership. I go back home. I start working at a local gym, selling memberships, because my folks said, hey, if you're going to come back home, you just have to work. You can keep training and keep preparing. You just have to work. Like that was
so believed in you.
Yes. So
you just need to do something else. You can't
exactly. So then I got online and started looking up like low-level agents, people that like are just new and looking for opportunities to get guys moved up. So I found a guy. I don't even remember what his name was because we didn't talk all that much, but he got me set up with a indoor team in Lakeland for like a 3-day workout. Lakeland, that team was all a very middle Georgia type of situation where a bunch of studs that just didn't have the size, or they didn't get looked at, or they played D3 or D2. So I go there middle of the season, and it's like, boom. Yeah, I did great in practice. They signed me. They put me at D end, and I ended up sticking and starting, and did really good. We made it to like the 3rd round of the playoff. The league was the National Indoor Football League, which is now defunct. But so I ended up moving to Lakeland for the next year because my mindset shifted to arena football. This is what I've always talked about. I can do this, right? Like, it's tough to get in the NFL. Once you're no longer a senior, it's really tough to get back to that stage with no scouting or anything like that. And at the time, arena football, AF1, was its own entity. Okay. So fast forward to that season, did great, had like 14 sacks. We won the championship. I've got a ring. It was for the American Indoor Football Association. Great experience, an experience that I'll never forget. And from there, I was going to play another season because they were paying the players right, the 2 owners. It was a good deal. I was going to play one more season and then try and move up because a lot of guys had already moved up to AF1, which the minimum they were paying at that time was like $4,000 a week. And I'm like, shit, that's legit to play football, 50 yards. I'm about that. And again, come to find out, the owners ran out of money. And so these 2 particular owners, they owned a strip club in Miami called Diamonds Cabaret. And this was like one of the best strip clubs at the time in Miami. Like, all the Dolphins would go there. All the Hurricanes would go there. And we ended up going there as a team. And I went in and took a look around and hung out for a little bit, and then went back outside to the bus and slept until everybody was ready to go home. Because it wasn't my cup of tea. Partying wasn't like my thing. Yeah, in that environment, I'm not a comfortable person. I don't like club or anything like that. I'm very much like,
I've been to a strip club before. I asked my
house. Yeah, so that was like my second experience, and so which was better than my first, which was in Middle Georgia, and it was a strip club that was built into the side of a gas station. So another terrible experience.
That might go over well. Like, I need to gas up. I need to, maybe look at a few things.
Anyways, you do dumb things when you're younger, but So again, I'm at this spot where I got to figure it out. I'm pissy. I don't know what I'm going to do. I keep training because I love to train, and I just wait for the phone to ring. The head coach from the Lakeland team went up to Huntington, West Virginia. And if you'll notice, in every step of this journey that I've had has led me to the next step just by me putting a little effort into saying, I want to continue to do this. So luck is when hard work meets opportunity, right? And all this is going to make sense at the end, but every step that I took led me to where I'm sitting right now. And so I didn't view it then that way. I just viewed it as like I tried really hard and I knew some people and I got to go where I wanted to go. So coach calls me from Huntington, West Virginia, which is where Marshall is. Hey, I'm with the Huntington Heroes now. You need to get your butt up here. We'll sign you right away. And I sat out. I didn't. I sat out all camp. I didn't go until after camp. And then I remember I was working at home and I was just getting frustrated being at home, being back in Lake Mary. I'm like, I need to go. So I called him. He's like, yeah, come on. Bought me a plane ticket. They flew me up there. I got up there and it was different. Huntington, West Virginia is, I mean, I don't know if there's going to be anybody listening from Huntington, West Virginia, but at the time, it was like the second sickest city in the nation. So people are always sick there. There's a lot of meth there, a lot of, just sick people for whatever reason. So ironically, I got the worst flu that I've ever had in my life when I was there. I was down for like 2 weeks, didn't get to play. But we got into about week 8 again. The owner says, I'm broke. I can't pay you guys. So the team fizzles. Now, this is where, again, luck and hard work match with opportunity. So 2 hours east of Huntington is where I'm sitting right now. And there was a arena team in Lexington, a couple miles north, called the Lexington Horsemen. And they were of the AF2, which was the feeder league for AF1, the main feeder league. So you play a year there and you get signed to camp with, an Arena 1 team or whatever. So luckily, my bunkie, Chris Barnes, he played guard for the Huntington Heroes. He knew the offensive line coach from the previous year that was in Lexington now coaching for the Horsemen. And he had come out to a game and he also saw a game on TV that we were on. And he only called me and Chris. And he said, hey, you guys got nowhere to go. I'm coming to get you. Pack your bags. I'm going to drive you to Lexington. We're going to work you out. See what happens. All right. Yeah. So now I have nothing but my clothes and I'm in a stranger's car, driving through the mountains, coming to Lexington, which, at the time, much nicer place than all the other places that I'd gone to. So I was very thankful.
You had never been to Lexington. You had never been to the state.
No. Yeah. No, actually, yes, I had. I went to football camp at UK when I was in 8th grade. That was the only experience I had.
Like a week? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a week. And I do have some extended family here that my dad's ex-wife, who he had my older brother and sister with, their aunt, her sister lives here. So her son is kind of like my cousin because he's their cousin. He's a good friend of mine. So I knew some people here, but it's still very weird coming here.
Sure.
And so we get out, we make it, obviously starting day 1. Okay. First game, popped my groin. And it wasn't it was a really hard pull. But when you pull your groin, you have to sit out for 4 weeks because it can turn into a hernia. So they make you sit out. So during that time, I began to develop a relationship with a young lady that worked in ticket sales and marketing. And she used to be a dancer for the team in the previous years. And so that gave that during that downtime, I began to, like I said, develop this relationship with her. And then I got back in and finished the season. Everything went great, continuing to date this particular young lady who is now my wife. And so you can see how every step has led me to what I have now. If I go anywhere else, I don't have my kids, I don't have my wife.
Wouldn't you say that that's part of the invisible string theory too? They're kind of pulling you through all that just to get you to Lexington where Megan is. So I mean, is.
I believe there's multiple strings that are going on at a time for everybody, right? Everybody's getting dragged. You can make, if you believe in God, you have free will, you can make your own decisions to do certain things. But the reality is that I feel like, I always think about that scene from Terminator 2 where Sarah Connor carves no fate into the wood, accept what you make it. So no fate, accept what you make it. And in the back of my mind, that always kind of stuck with me because that's my favorite all-time movie.
Yeah.
And so when I would think back on that, I'm like, man, this is just all coming, like everything that you put out into the world, everything that you put out into existence comes true. And this becomes super important here later. So we moved to Florida. I got a contract from a team that was in Fort Myers, Florida, on the West Coast. I believe they were the Bobcats or the Wildcats. It was another AF2 team. They're like, hey, come play Mac linebacker. We'll get you signed to the Tampa Bay Storm or the Orlando Predators or whatever. Yeah. That ended up falling through for whatever reason. I didn't go. Instead, I chose to because we moved back in with my parents, me and Megan. And at that point, I started to just be like, all right, like I'm chasing something that's just maybe not going to happen. Like I can't continue to make $300 a game for 16 games and expect that that's going to be enough. So at that point, I'm like, well, I have a criminal justice bachelor's degree. I'm going to go to the academy. And I ended up working for the sheriff's department in Seminole County. And I ended up getting on, well, let me back up a little bit. So part of this experience is important. So my first coaching experience came about with my alma mater high school, Lake Mary. And a good buddy of mine that I played football with got in contact with me and he said, hey, I see you're living back here now. Like, you want to help me coach girls weightlifting? And I said, girls weightlifting? Like, okay, like, yeah, sure. I didn't I'm going to work with a bunch of teenage girls. I was like 26, 27 at the time. I'm like, all right, we'll just do it and see how it goes. I'm going to get paid a little bit of money. I have time because sheriff's department was 2 days on, 3 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off, so on and so forth. So I had lots of time. And I end up bringing the idea of Conjugate into that environment. And that was like my first, practice run with coaching girls. And again, most of these girls were like stupid great athletes. So they took to the Conjugate system, which if anybody knows about the Conjugate system, when you put an athlete in that system, it always works. There's no way it doesn't. Like you can't take an average person that's an athlete and put them in that system and they not get results. Like I know.
I think that would be the good place to start too, Justin, with we got the history of like where you were from a young Justin to now you're in your 20s and you're in a relationship with your then girlfriend. But then the Conjugate system itself, like for the people that don't know what that means, like new people that don't know you and people that have known you for a long time, like myself, like what is the Conjugate system in a few words, just so we can explain that to everybody?
So the Conjugate system in a nutshell, at least the way that I view it, the ability, now the way that we use it in the weightlifting world or the powerlifting world is kind of different than how we use it in the general population world or with like athletes or whatever. Essentially, we're just conjoining all aspects of fitness and bringing all of them up at the same time. Okay. So the comparison that I give is if you look at what most people typically will use as like standard linear or block periodization, where the first block, months 1 and 2, you're only working on GPP or conditioning. Then you stop GPP and conditioning and you go into a block of hypertrophy for 1 or 2 months, which not to mention is silly because it's really hard to gain muscle in just 1 or 2 months. Anyways, I digress. And then you go into a power block and then you bring it all together in like a realization or like your transformative block, right? But what happens is when you get to block 4, everything from block 1 and 2 is gone because you have ceased to train the special strengths that come along with those blocks. So I stopped doing conditioning and GPP and I stopped doing hypertrophy work and only focus on power and strength. Whereas with the Conjugate system, we're constantly working on all of those things at the same time, right? It's just a matter of we weigh the importance on certain things in different phases throughout the year. So we may hyper focus on strength in a 3-month block, but we're still doing GPP, we're still training hypertrophy, and we're still training power movements because everybody in the general population needs that. Right. So now if we're going to nutshell that for like girls weightlifting, for instance, okay, we know that it's bench with a pause, max effort, right? And we know it's a clean and jerk. Okay. So we can use max effort lifts to drive up those 2 lifts.
Just going to go back to John Davis. Are you still at that time period, like learning from him, or have you been looking at textbooks yourself from Louis?
I continued to learn from him, but there was kind of like a stage where I just kind of like, I actually worked for him for a little while. And I did some like interning stuff, and I helped him with like marketing or whatever, like passing out flyers and trying to get kids to come in. And obviously I'm always training. And every session that I ever had with him, I don't have it anymore, but I wrote down everything that we did so I could try and understand what it was that we were doing. I remember like there was a point back in 2002 where we didn't have bands. So the gym that we were in, they had tubes. So he would take the tubes and double them up around a dumbbell and up on the bar because that's the closest thing that we could get to bands. And then, stuff got real and we got chains and reverse hypers and glute ham raises and all that stuff.
Going back to what you said a couple minutes ago, like breaking down the conjugate system too, like I think it all goes back to the power of like the logbook. Like you just said, like, oh, we wrote down everything we did. I think what I see a lot, like I got off social media recently. I'm going to get back on there, just taking a break.
Well, you have to get back on now.
Yeah, I have to get back on now. Yeah, I actually learned in school that like the scholars in media comm would take like the whole month of January off. Like they take like a 6-week break until like post Valentine's Day. And I took it to heart, but now, I have to get my ass back on there. But like I would see for years, like these old school guys, and like I would definitely consider yourself and myself fairly old school, where, why would you not want to look at what you did with a great coach and a mentor like John Davis? Why would you not want to do that? And then if everyone is doing it at the top level, like Louis and his guys at Westside, writing down what they're doing either in the gym or a logbook, or maybe in a notebook later on that they can refer to, why would you as a young lifter at 18 to 25 not do that? And I do see a lot of guys not logging anything when I would go to commercial gyms before I got the garage gym, which I am formally calling the Dwight and Layla's Gym for Muscles, my two dogs. Our employee of the month is my son. He's hit 7 months in a row. He's actually been the employee of the month, which is phenomenal for him. Phenomenal.
Fantastic
for his life. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you see that too. And like, obviously we're kind of getting a little off track, but I don't see people logging stuff when I used to be in commercial gyms. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what is the power of the logbook, like, in your opinion?
So I think, to kind of double side that of the coin type of situation with kids that age, 16 to 18 to even to 25, like they just have so much going on in their brain that not everybody's going to be driven to think like, this is going to be my career later in life. I better start paying attention now. They honestly just have no clue. And so like for the girls, with girls, they have so much going on. And I just learned so much. In fact, 3 or 4 of them are clients of mine now. And I just learned so much.
Back then, like, you're just saying like, hey, Camille, like I have your lifts all right here, from the last year and a half, like you clearly can do more weight, or, hey, I know what's going on hormonally. Like we can get
I did log things. I think you have to, but we didn't have that app tech back then. So this is like 2008 to 2010. And so it was still a logbook time or a whiteboard, right? So in fact, the head coach, Pat Barrett, close friend of mine, he was better at the logging stuff. And I was better at like just being the sergeant of making sure that they're doing things a certain way and that this is the way that we want to, whether we're doing dynamic effort or whether we're doing max effort or whatever, pulling the sled or whatever. We did all the things. The girls conditioned. We did things that typical weightlifting teams wouldn't do because most of them weren't there to be successful weightlifters. They were there in prep for lacrosse, softball, volleyball, basketball. We had very few that were just there to lift weights. So we were like strength coaches at that point. So we had to go through all the progressions. And back then in conjugate as a periodization style was still kind of like muddy water. Is it completely random? Are we doing enough volume? And it's a lot, the science is a lot more complete on that now on why it works so well. But naturally, when you do conjugate, whether it's random or not, if you stay within the guidelines of conjugate, you scratch all the itches. You're going to get enough volume if you're trying to drive up your weaknesses. You're going to get enough absolute strength, which is what we were after, if you do max effort. If you ask AI right now what the fastest way to get strong and the best way to get strong, what method, It's the max effort method.
Hey, let's put it to the
There's
test.
there's no other method that can touch
What is the
the strength capacity output of max effort.
What is the fastest way to get stronger? Is that what you
Yeah.
want to
What method is the fastest way to get stronger? And AI will tell you the max effort method. I know this because I randomly checked one day just to see what it would say. So again, I'm learning that not only at the time, am I learning to work with young athletes, but I'm learning to work with females. And I found that, through the amount of empathy that myself and Pat had, we were able to get a lot of common ground by showing them that not only could they do it, but we do it too. So we're practicing what we preach. And if we can do it, they can certainly do it. Not that I didn't take like the father figure role. I took the uncle role. And I felt like that was the best for that situation, was to be like the crazy uncle that motivated them to do things that they didn't think was possible. And I learned a ton about the mental side, the psychological side of training and how it impacts. And the best example I can give you is with girls at that age, their confidence isn't super high yet, especially when it comes to weightlifting. So women in particular, and I've learned this now, they could be at 95% of their max and get 5 reps and go up 5 pounds and not get 1 rep. And it's just the way that their body's built to fire like motor units and all that kind of stuff and recruit. And so we had to find like a common ground with not only like how close to a max can we do reps and all that kind of stuff, but then also like when they walk up to that bar, if they're not confident, especially with the clean and jerk, they're not putting that weight overhead. So what we would do, I had this like stupid thing that I would say, like, I want you to treat the bar like it's a puppy dog. Okay. And then that turned into like, just grip it and rip it. Don't think about it. If you get up to that bar and in your mind, all you're thinking about is, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. You're not going to do it. So what I would tell them is you walk up to that bar, you grab it, and you just go. Don't worry about form. This is like 90% and above. You just grab it and you go. And most of the time, they were successful. And we had a couple of state champs, and we were conference and district champ every single year. We did, as a team, we were like one of the best teams in the state, but we did have several state runner-ups, and then we had a couple of state champs too. And so that kind of was where I got into like this coaching and understanding like how to utilize the conjugate system on a low level.
Right. And I actually wanted to ask you or make a point. I was actually listening when you said like girls' confidence at that age too, and then you said the 5 reps at 95%, and then you go up 5 pounds, they couldn't get 1. What really struck me there or resonated with me there was I was actually listening to a Malcolm Gladwell podcast because he's a big runner, and these 2 female running scholars have like studied that and how like we give out these scholarships during high school, and young men at the age you were, and you're accelerating and you're getting stronger, bigger, faster every single year. And what we know now is females are not exactly hitting their peak until their mid-20s and 30s, where men are already hitting that peak before women. So therefore, like, we're not seeing the potential of young Julie until she might be 25, 28. But
I would say even beyond 30s.
Right. That's the problem, right? As you said, then they say, oh, well, I'm just not as strong as I used to be. I mean, when they're not, you said crazy uncle, but also like the uncle that can say, hey, like, I get it. Like, I've already arrived. I've already become a fully grown man. Like, you're going to become a fully grown woman and be very successful in life. And this confidence isn't just going to happen overnight. It might take you, but I can be someone that can help you, be someone that's going to shine bright, that light bright on you, versus saying, hey, like, you just got to go get the thing. I mean, I'm guessing, giving them a ton of positivity in that moment, not just like, oh,
yeah. And we didn't baby them. Like, right. That wasn't in my genes to baby them. It was we made it fun, right? So we cut up for sure. Like, no one jokes better than me. And there was, again, I made friends then that are still friends to this day. Like two of them were at my wedding. And so because I just was that figure that I guess that they needed at that point in their life. But what we saw was that the confidence that we gave them through that, that very constructive positivity carried over to absolute savagery in their sports. So these girls became like, with lacrosse specifically, like super rough and just super confident and super successful in their respective sports that they played. And I think that says a lot about how you can gain and what you can gain from being fit and being really strong, because at that age there's just not a lot of girls that are really strong. But I had a girl that went on to play Division I college softball that trap bar deadlifted 365, and I can remember bringing deputies with me over to work out in the gym after we were done with practice, and like, hey, let's do trap bar deadlift. And I could trap bar 675 at the time, so it wasn't nothing for me. But they get on there and they put 300, 315 on them. They're like struggling to get to, and I'm like thinking to myself, geez, I have a 170-pound girl that can trap bar deadlift 365, and she can bench 225.
Clicked in your head, like, if I can get a 16, 17-year-old girl to do that. You said she was like a sophomore, junior?
Yeah, she was, at that time, she was a senior.
Yeah, like, okay, so she's 17, 18 years old. I have her doing 365, 375, and it's like, you have a fully grown man in his 20s, 30s, maybe older.
30s.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, I feel like at 33, I'm in the prime right now, like maybe a little bit older than like maybe, but definitely the strongest I've ever been. So I would say, like, did it click for you? Like, oh, I can get other people incredibly strong using it.
It started to,
yeah.
And to this day, when it comes to all of the books and the research and all that stuff, it always starts with me. And I'll be the first person to admit that. Like, it's about me first. I want to learn how this works for me, and then I will then use that for you or for anybody else that I work with, as long as it's relevant to them. So
yeah,
everything that I was researching then, which in season for the girls, yes, obviously, like, I'm researching to figure out, like, how can this system work great for them. But at the end of the day, it was always very self-centered, and I don't mind admitting that. Like, it's just how I was, and it's, to this day, I'm still that way. Like, all the certifications and all those things that I have, or the things that I want to do, they're going to be about me first, and then I utilize that to help my clients.
No, like, is that being self-centered? Because you could say, like, in my time as like coaching, before like I got the sales job that I've been doing for a year and a half, is you don't, and this is something that like you and I talked about before, like, if you're not willing to do yourself what you want your clients to do, like, what are we actually doing here? Because you would never tell someone, hey, go mow your lawn, but you don't know how to mow your lawn. I mean, you should be able to do everything that you've asked your clients of. And I feel like that's something that, if someone is a coach and they're not doing sled drags, but they keep telling their clients to do sled drags, go get your ass outside and go do sled drags. If you're going to make your client do them, or I hate the Airdyne bike, I know for sure you do the Airdyne bike, so every week I get my ass on there and I bitch you out, but I know you do it.
Yeah, I guess part of it is, maybe obsession is just a better word. Like, I'm obsessed with just being the best version that I can be right now.
Sure, but not all of it. Yeah, it's like, hey, like, I want to be specialized, but I also want to have the ability to program anything, because I've also tried it and see how it works on me at my height, weight, age.
Yeah, of course. That seeing the results that other people could get is very gratifying. Like, you PR almost every week, right? Like, it's been a never-ending thing. No matter what stage you're in, whether you're cutting, whether you're building, it doesn't matter. Like, you always hit PRs based on the way that we schedule things. Right. That's really gratifying for me. There's just no doubt in my mind. But the pursuit of, greatness, in terms of like how I perceive greatness for physical capacity, is always going to be there, and it's always like a driving factor in like what I do. And it started back then, right? But I just began to see. I always was told, like, hey, Jay, you're a freak. You would have done good in any program. But I really, truly believe that that's not true, because I've tried other things. I wouldn't be a good coach if I hadn't tried other things. I've tried linear and percentage-based stuff, and it never worked as well for me. And that's partially because I'm very A-type, but it never worked as well for me as Conjugate. I always got results. It was just a continuation of results. Like, how am I still hitting PRs at 42?
Sure.
And I don't compare. I don't say, oh, Dave, these are PRs from like 5 years ago. No,
Sure.
I'm talking about like if I close grip bench, my best close grip bench up until a couple months ago was like 410, right? If I do 420, that's just a lifetime PR. It's not the most that I've ever benched, but a close grip, that's the most I've ever benched.
How long do you keep? That's such a segue. How long do you keep a PR? Because at 33, if I had done like a, let's say 550 squat, which I have not, but it was 5 years ago at 28 years old, I think that's too long. And I could say, yes, lifetime, like you said, but I mean,
I think,
if I asked you, I think
yes, I'm not telling people like, oh, I bench to like 455 is my best ever bench, right? I did that when I was like 26, 27, right. Something like that. I'm not telling people that that's my bench right now, right?
No, exactly.
It's still my best ever. So when I beat it,
ever, yeah,
right. So when I beat it, then it that's changed, right? But yeah, I'm not going off of like, if someone asks me which I think is stupid, like, hey, what's your bench press?
Probably it's a stupid.
I don't know. Like I did 405 with 60 pounds in chains the other day. Does that count? Like I don't know. Like
yeah,
it's day to day. You're
different. Who you're talking to as well. Like if you're talking to Louis Simmons, who's passed on, and he says, hey, what's the most you've ever done? And like you give him all the context, I feel like he would give you a better answer, or like he would have an understanding, of course, of what
he would still say it doesn't matter. It's what you can do today.
Right. Exactly. But versus a Joe on the street at your local, Gold's Gym or any commercial gym might say, hey, what's your bench? Because they really just want to know. And then they would say the classic, oh, I used to do that in high school.
Yeah. So like, if you think about, for me, right, like I'm 42, I graduated high school 2001. Like certainly there were people back then that were stronger than me at that time, right? Yeah. My mindset is like, that's great that you have that memory. Are you stronger than me now? Are you more athletic than me right now? Are you more powerful than me right now? You're not. And so I have longevity in the game because of this system. And that's why I try to explain to people all the time. It's not necessarily about what you did 2 years ago. It's about what you can do right now. And
going back to like training those young women too, like, and you said that some of them are your clients now, which I actually didn't know that, is it's funny because I don't know if they remember, but I'm sure you do, just being an adult at that time and saying, hey, like, Kaylee, what you did at 16, is phenomenal. But, now we're 28 years old. You just had your second child. You're now raising 2 kids. You have a partner. You have all these bills. You have a big career. Let's say, you're a registered nurse or what have you. Your husband or partner works full time. You got to put both these kids, through school and daycare, what have you. The game has changed. So your impact mentally and physically, of course, is going through childbirth again. I mean, I do think it to me, like the question is like, do any of those clients that used to be on that team that now know you, like, do they remember those moments of like, hey, like, I remember when you took me from this like little, not confident young girl all the way up to now I am a fully grown woman with a family and career. And it feels, and I can remember having, some of them I stayed in contact with, right? So there wasn't like this big gap in like, hey, how have you been? It's been 10 years. I haven't talked to you, because most of all of them are in their 30s now. Right. And most of all of them have kids. And so I have a better understanding of where they're at now just because of who I've worked with in the past. And so they have, I would say, just in conversation with them, like their memories are fond, but they still trust me. And that's why they're there. So like whether they've had issues or they've had kids or they've gained some weight, like all the things that happen going through the process of life, they still to this day trust me to help them get back to really what in their mind, that's like their peak athleticism, and that's where they want to be. And I try to explain to them, I'm like, you can be more than that. Right. And there's a couple of reasons why. And people lose this perspective in that when you get older, number one, you're more mature. So you can be more focused on whatever that task is, right? It's not about a trophy anymore. It's about competing with yourself. And so they're a lot more willing and able to do the things that are necessary to get them where they are because they're more mature.
Okay. The other thing too is back then they're dependent on their parents, right? Now they can make their own decisions on like, I determine what's in my refrigerator because I work to put food on the table or whatever. They have money so they can make different decisions based on like, okay, I need to go buy this supplement. There's no roadblock, right? The only roadblock is, what's in their brain. Right. Like that's the only roadblock is like, okay, can I lose this 20 pounds? Can I lose this 30 pounds? Whatever. And the ones that I've worked with have had no problems, doing that. And so I have one that's in my challenge right now. And granted, she's done figure competitions in the past, but she really wanted to move more towards something that was more lasting and sustainable. And so she wanted to see, she remembered how we did things in the past and she wanted to kind of dig up that athleticism, bring that back. Because one of the things that a lot of people take for granted is muscle memory. And when I relate that to the people that played sports, I call that like athletic potentiation. And there's this like big study that came out, I don't know how many years ago, but they took people that lifted weights for like up to 10 years and then they stopped lifting for 3 years, right? And then they started lifting again. So this is a very long study. And every single one of them gained the muscle and strength back 10 times faster than what it took them to gain it in the first place before they stopped lifting. That's potentiation, right? So that's like you've done something, especially with sports, because there's just so much going on there as far as like being an athlete, running and jumping and pushing and pulling and all these different things, right? A lot of people that played sports take that for granted in that, quite frankly, it's easier to get them results than somebody that doesn't have any kind of athletic background, or maybe they didn't play sports but they have good genes, right? Like those people tend to get results a bit faster than the people that have no background and their genes just aren't that good. And that's one of the reasons.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the high school because we segued there, which was great. And that's kind of what this podcast is going to be for anyone that's listening. It's like we're going to go on tangents because we're obviously super passionate about it. This is your business, and it's my passion to talk about these things, but also ongoing topics that we have today. But you're at the high school. You're helping out with Pat Barrett, the head coach of the weightlifting team. You've been there for how long, and then when do you go to that next step?
So I was, and thank you for being Joe Rogan for a second and getting us back on track where we need to be.
He likes to segue. I don't know.
I'm supposed to be the one doing that.
Jamie, am I that guy?
Well, you were just Joe Rogan for a second because he has said that he lets people go on a tangent, but then he has to physically bring them back to the reality of the conversation. Like when he had Trump on, Trump wants to talk about all these other things, but Joe's like, hey, no, what are you going to do better? Right? Like, what are you going to do different this time? So you just did that. So thank you. All right. So this is where things kind of get sour. Okay. I'm going to keep this to the short and sweet version as much as possible because it's not difficult for me to talk about, but it can be, I can get kind of long-winded in this story. And so to kind of bring everything full circle in terms of football, okay, because that where we ended in Lexington wasn't the end. It was just the end of that chapter. So I get this itch around 29 to play football again. And I knew at that time, I'm like, all right, I'm not just going to jump onto an arena team. Like I don't have any film for the last, it's been 4 years. So I have to,
Sorry?
Do what?
How old?
29.
Oh, okay.
So this was like right when I got married. I had been with the sheriff's department for 2 years now.
Like personally, what's going on in your life? Because I do think that is a big part of not only where you are now, like is like developing a family, and who knows where you'd be if you didn't have.
Yeah. So I go and work at the sheriff's department. I go through the academy, top of class, all that kind of stuff. As far as physicality goes.
Humble brag.
Yeah. So I'm working as a detention deputy in the county jail. Made a ton of friends that way. I ended up on C shift, which was like the perfect shift for my personality because that's where all the clowns and the badasses were, right? So like we didn't care, like we weren't in it to start trouble with people. We just wanted to cut up all day. But if somebody was starting some stuff, we're running to it because that was just how everyone was built. And because I came from a physical background, I wanted to be involved in that stuff too. So I kind of like forced my way into that just by like if somebody calls a code, I'm going to try to be the first person there. I had many experiences. Like my first response to resistance was a fight, and an inmate was choking another inmate. I called the code yellow, and it started off as a fight. And then, you're not supposed to run in until someone's life is in danger. And when this starts happening, someone's life is in danger. So I ran up, I threw the keys down the hall to the guy running. I then ran up. I waited for the officer to get there so the door didn't close behind me, because this is 40 inmates in this cell. Keep in mind, I have a good relationship with these guys. Like, I'm not only cutting up with deputies, I'm also cutting up with inmates. So I'm not treating them like shit, right? Like, I'm treating them like normal people. This is a Gen Pop pod, so this is like guys that like had weed on them. They're just in for dumb stuff. Right. This isn't a Fed pod where guys are like raping people and murdering people. Right. At least at first. Right. So this is like my first experience when I'm there. So I run up, grab the guy by his blues, and throw him this way down onto the concrete. He thought it was another inmate, because this was a guy that I was semi cool with. So he gets up, and before he even sees me, he swings. And so I swung. When he swung, I kind of moved my head back, just like out of this. And he just nicked my nose. I barely felt it, but he nicked my nose. So I picked him up again. And he's about, my height, about 185, 190 pounds. I picked him up overhead like this. And at that time, all the deputies are coming because someone's called a code red at that point, which means like officer in danger or whatever. Mind you, we're on the second story. So the guy downstairs sees me heading towards the rail, because at this point, like, I'm just reacting. And he's like, don't do it. And so I dump him right there on the floor. And then he still hasn't recognized that it's a deputy that's ragdolling. He thought I was going to throw him over, but it was just the angle of how it was. So he said, don't do it, but I wasn't going to throw him over the rail.
You just dropped him.
Yeah. So I dump him again as professionally as you can dump somebody when you're fighting. He gets up again, and now he's like, it doesn't matter that I'm a deputy. He's in it because he's got to show himself out in front of the other inmates. So he comes at me. I double leg. I get his back. I put him in a rear naked, but I don't squeeze until he gives up his hands, and we cuff him. That's the end of the story. From that moment on, I was now a part of the goon squad because of what I did. Everybody there couldn't believe that I went in there with 40 other inmates and handled business the way that I did. So from that point on, you're getting moved over to maximum security. And just know that if we call you, we need you. There's a good reason for it. I never went into that job thinking I'm going to start shit with people. I went into that job, thinking like this is a job. And then it was just so much fun to cut up with all the guys there, even though it was stressful. You would leave and your ears would be burning from the stress. And so many uses of force were, happened in that 4-year period, but they were never because it was like I wanted to go in there and do it. It's because, hey, someone's acting up, they spit on somebody, or they threw feces on somebody, or threw urine on somebody, or whatever. You got to go in and get them cuffed up, because they're being super extra, and they need to be taken care of. Okay. So there's like this halfway point in this experience where I get the opportunity to go and play on a semi-pro team. And this wasn't just like any semi-pro team. There was pro guys playing on this team. It was just in a semi-pro league, so it wasn't paid. And this kind of brings the football story full spectrum in that this is 2012. AF1 Arena Football League is having their first ever strike. And me and a couple other guys get called up to go to a workout to fill the roster spots, because the first game that was going to be aired was on the NFL Network, and they did not want to mess that up. So I go to this thing. The D-line coach for the Orlando Predators is like, who is this guy? I need him. So I got picked to be on one of the roster spots for either of the teams in the event that they went through with the strike, which they did. So I had to fill out like this moonlighting form, and the game was on a Friday night. It was the Orlando Predators versus the Pittsburgh Power, who was owned by Les Swan. If you remember, the receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got to meet him. I think he's a Hall of Fame guy. And so I go out there, and I end up getting drafted to the other team, the Pittsburgh Power. So now I'm in the locker room with all these guys that are looking at me like, who the heck are you? Like, you coming off the street, I'm a cop, whatever. Right before the game, they're getting us fitted because I had a helmet with the Predators because we had been practicing with them all week, but I had to wear someone else's helmet from the Power because I was in their uniform with their helmet decal and stuff. I get a helmet that doesn't fit. So I'm like, my face mask is coming down to here. It's just an absolute mess. I still have pictures of it. I remember going to the coach and like, dude, I'm 29, almost 30 years old. Like, I'm not trying to get a head injury because I'm wearing a helmet that doesn't fit. It didn't matter. I did it. I started the game. I played awesome. I went against guys for the Predators that were on the squad that were first team. So I got to have that experience that I constantly put out into the air, which was to play at the time, which was like the second, almost the pinnacle. NFL's the pinnacle. Right below that was like AFL and CFL, Canadian Football League, right? So I got to play in the AFL. I did it. I got to do it. After that, everything kind of went back to normal. They didn't need the replacement players anymore. I got a call a couple weeks later. Hey, we want you to come out to practice. We're going to sign you to a waiver, bring you into practice for the week and see how you do with the other guys. I'm like, is this really happening right now? This is like my dream come true. The game was my dream come true, but getting called up to be a part of the organization of the Orlando Predators, which I grew up watching, was the pinnacle for me because I didn't get to where I wanted to be, but what I always talked about I wanted to do was play arena football because I thought it was the coolest thing, and I thought those guys made good money.
So cool, yeah.
There was guys making, six figures. Most of the guys made six figures. So I'm like, this is awesome, right? By the way, I got paid that game that I played. I got paid $500 to play that game. They had lowered the game rate to play. And so that's why they were striking, because it was like $3,000 a game. And then they lowered it to 500 because the league wasn't making any money. So that's why they went on strike. Anyways, so I go up to practice. I did really good. My dad left work, I can remember, because this was such a big deal for him. And he was so proud. He had so much pride that he left work on his motorcycle, miles down the road, and just to sit on the other side of the fence where we were practicing and just watch me practice with pros, right? Like, and how big of a deal that was to our family. And at that time, like I was kind of beat up from the season that we were already playing with the semi-pro team. So like, I wasn't in tip top at that time, but I was still in really, really good shape. And I got to practice with them for the remainder of the week. And essentially what they do when they bring you in on like a practice waiver is you sign the release and all that kind of stuff. And they have their guys, right? But when they bring in local guys, it's the reason that they do that is not only to take a look at you to kind of put you on their roster, but if one of their guys goes down, because they only keep 2 or 3 guys on the practice roster, the rest is just like the travel roster. So they don't have like a practice squad because they can only have I think it's 23 guys that travel. Okay. So they don't have a lot of people. Well, if they have me, they can call me up and I can be there that day. Versus if they have a guy that's across the country, he's got to fly, he's got to get all his paperwork done. I'm right there. So I never got another call because the guy played the whole season, didn't get hurt. That was the main MAC linebacker. But I felt like because I played in that game and because I got brought back, no one else got brought back from the creative players, right? Like none of those guys, the reserves, none of them got called back from that game, but I did. So that made me feel special. And I felt like at that point, I did play another year of semi-pro, but at that point it was just a play. Like I didn't have any aspirations of trying to go any higher than that because I did it, right? Like I did it. I made it work. So this is where things get dicey. Find out that this is July of 2013, or 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. Find out that Megan's pregnant, and I also find out that I'm under administrative investigation for a use of force that I'm told to do. So I went through the investigative process, and at the time with a very hard head because I didn't understand why I was even under investigation because nothing went wrong. It was a perfect use of force. No one got hurt. Everyone was laughing. It was fine. And ultimately, the sheriff didn't like my attitude, and I didn't like his attitude either. And so we agreed to disagree, and I decided to resign so that I could cash my PTO. But it was still the technicality was it was a forced resignation. So I got to keep my money, which was like $50,000 when you have that much PTO built up. It's your PTO hours multiplied by your hourly rate. And so I cashed that check. Had I got fired, I wouldn't have been able to cash that check. And with the baby coming, it's like, Megan had just become a nurse, so like things were a little dicey. That left that bad taste of law enforcement in my mouth, and I never went back to it. Fast forward a little bit, I started to go through some like really extreme mental health issues with like panic attacks and depression. And I went through a period of like 3 or 4 months where I didn't leave my apartment because I was scared of having a panic attack outside of my apartment because I was having them inside. I couldn't drive. I couldn't do all these different things. So finally I got some help, got on some medication, and things started to kind of trend up a little bit. I go and start working at a tiling warehouse. I'm there for 8 weeks. Parker's born. 4 weeks later, I get fired. So my journey is not all puppy dogs and ice cream. All that to say, right? It's all about, I told my therapist the other day, yes, I go to therapy. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hey, that's cool.
I think everybody should. But I told my therapist, I feel like one of the biggest words that I can use to describe like what I've gone through in that whole journey is endurance, right? To endure the positive and negative things that occur in your life and that you experience for God knows what reason. I don't know why I got hit with a mental health bug. Like it just hit me out of nowhere. Was it football? Was it the head trauma? Was it the trauma of when you're on administrative leave, you're not allowed to leave. You're on house arrest. They come and knock on your door. A cop comes and knocks on your door and makes sure that you're there because you're still getting paid. They don't want you out running around when you're on administrative leave. So people might think like, oh, well, that sounds awesome. Like I can just hang out and watch shows all day. Guess what? That's not what I want to do. I want to go out in the back and go fishing. I want to go work out at 10 o'clock. I don't want to work out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody's there. I have things that I want to go do. I'm an active person. So for me, now I'm getting cabin fever. And I think part of that kind of carried over and it was just like a boil that just blew up. And then, so I ended up having those issues. So I get fired from the tile place, and that left a horrible taste in my mouth too. And so that's the point where we say, you know what, we're getting out of Florida. We're going to Texas because that's where Megan's parents were. Yeah. So from there, I end up at Gold's Gym, and that's where I really start to see my personality and dealing with people and interpersonal communication, and all these things start to kind of carry over, and helping trainers do different things and working with different people and creating my network that carries over even to today. And through that, with the relationships that I made at Gold's, I end up at Total Nutrition as a manager. So I didn't start off as a sales guy. I started as a manager. Had no clue what I was getting into.
Yeah.
No clue.
This is like 2014?
This is 2015.
2015.
Yeah. But what I knew was I know a ton of people from Gold's. I know everybody at all the other gyms that I go and work out at because that's just who I was. I like some variability in where I train. And so that in itself led me to drawing people into the store.
Where are you in
Texas?
Where are you in Texas at this point?
Waco,
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So I took over a store that was thriving under Jason Spears, but the goal with Charlie Hartwig and Jeff Remillard as my main contacts, the owners, was you got to do better. If you want to do good with us, you got to do better. Okay, how the heck am I going to do that? Okay, so that's where, I created the ambassador program, which is still to this day with 5 Star. And, I was the first person to do that with Total Nutrition. No one did that before me. And so they had sponsored athletes, but the whole ambassador concept was like, let's just get as many people as possible, give them discounts, and just let them annoy the crap out of everybody on social media with posting.
And now what does every company do? They have
yes, exactly. So I don't know if I played a role in what everybody else does. I just know that I had an idea in the shower and I said, hey, Meg, write this down. And then I took it the next day, and all the guys were like, holy crap, that's awesome. Let's just do it and ask for forgiveness later. Sure. And it turned into a cornerstone for the company. Then I took that and I said, well, what if we do like a seminar? And then that turned into, what if we do a weight loss challenge? The first one that the company ever did. What if we do a weight loss challenge? Let's just see what happens. We charge people $20 and we end up getting.
It wasn't free at that time.
No, we because we were the first ones to do it. So we did a kickoff seminar, which like 60 people showed up to. We had chairs all over the store. We just got up there on the whiteboard and said, hey, this supplement does this supplement does that. We've got the InBody. This is all the things that we're going to do. We took the money and then we ended up like having one of the best ever days without a sale that store's ever seen, just because we decided to do that, right? So everything was just about like, I got to figure it out. How am I going to figure this out? I got to figure it out. I got to try things, right?
Were Charlie and Jeff like in your ear, like consistently like learning what you were doing, or were they just kind of like go for it and just like?
No, I didn't even discuss it with them. Afterwards, they're like, dude, what the heck are you doing? Please share. And then that's when the first like GM district manager meeting came about. So fast forward 2016, 2017, the most insane revenue year that that store has ever done. Charlie says, hey, I can't do this stuff that I'm doing anymore. I'm making you the district manager. You have College Station, you have Killeen, you have soon to be Fort Hood, and then you have Waco as your home store. Again, situation, I'm still getting comfortable driving places by myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know this about me, and I never told Charlie that I was scared to death to take that position because I didn't want to drive by myself because of my mental health issues from the past.
But big risk.
And so there was times when I drove to stores that I had to call people just randomly because I was having or almost having a panic attack just from driving and worrying about how long the distance was. I get that this sounds crazy, but that's where my mind was at the time, and just in worry. And so that got better, and then it got easy. And I had help. Like my wife went to, like, if we did overnights at like College Station, my wife went with me, and that made it easy. But eventually I was able to do it on my own. And so that led to like the first district manager, general manager, like the best guys coming to Austin, the start of Neutral One, the start of all these districts, and the start of 5-Star Nutrition. And I was at that first meeting, and the only person that's left, or the only two people that's left from that meeting is that's still with the company, is Mailer and Colt.
Mailer's not, to my understanding.
Well, he's a franchisee now. Yeah. So, but that led to, hey, we want you to present all this stuff that you're doing because we think it can benefit the company. You know, AKA they want to make more money. How do they do it? How are you doing it? So I kind of got my badge of experience through the ambassadorship program and the weight loss challenge. And then that led to, you know, like the high point, which was 2019, which was like, hey, we're gonna have you. And initially what was gonna happen was I was gonna go and be with Jerry and Dave at headquarters, and we were gonna run like the training program from headquarters in terms of like the ambassadors, how to do we had a process that we used with customers to give just like amazing customer service.
Sure, yeah.
Then COVID hit and that went downhill, right? So that was gone. In fact, I believe that was the time where we were all the district managers and directors were given a phantom stock or like a phantom share. And I don't remember if you were around or if you heard about this, but essentially like they were trying to sell the company, and the people that were going to buy the company, guess whose store they visited just off a hand?
I'm guessing they went to Waco.
They went to Waco, and they went in and they saw like the insanity of us bouncing around. There was like 20 people in the store, and everybody was leaving with bags of supplements attached to their arms, walking out the door, and they're like, "Oh my God!" So I remember like the Facebook Live, like the next week, they're like, thanks to, you know, Justin, like we hit a home run with these people that are potentially going to come in, and they're not going to buy the whole company, but they're going to buy, 51% share. Well, that we were at the time, and anybody could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the amount that the company was deemed to be worth at that time was about $100 million. And so had they purchased, we would have each probably gotten somewhere between 60 and 100K for our stock sharing, whatever that we had.
Like the DMs.
Yep. And the people that were going to buy it were the people that they bankrolled. I believe it was this bike here. What is it? Peloton. There's a like a really dainty fitness gym that I can't remember. It starts with the Equinox. they owned all the Equinoxes, right? So they were going to buy it, and then COVID hit, and everything went to shit. So long story short, Fort Hood closes.
I was going to say, if we could back up briefly, just
Yeah.
I'll like segue in like September 2017 when I started at Performance Nutrition, then converted to 5-Star Nutrition. So I'm from southeastern Massachusetts, Taunton, Massachusetts, the Silver City. Not really known for much there. Sandwiched halfway between Boston and Providence. So I didn't know Justin until we had started at Performance. So Performance was part of its own entity, and this guy, I actually forgot his name. Like maybe his name was Jeff or something. I don't remember, but he basically like let his stores like Seekonk, Nashua, Framingham, Dedham, there was Milford, I think there was a few others, but he kind of just let them do their deal, like whatever they wanted. And we sell a ton of products. And then I came into Dedham, which is pretty close to the city, and no one really wanted to go to that spot. My dad grew up in Hyde Park, which is very close to Dedham. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll be close to like a couple of my uncles there. And, just didn't care because I was a young kid in his 20s. But, yeah, I had probably just seen a lot of your stuff because I followed a lot of the stores on social media. But then I had told leadership there just very briefly, like, hey, I really want to go to Texas or somewhere across the country. Did not want to live in my parents' basement. Quite literally lived in my parents' basement. Just that's just where the room was. I mean, it's an old joke, right? But it was time to leave. I think I was like 26 or 27 when I just said it's time to go. So I will say, like, just mentioning in this podcast, like briefly, like I met Thomas Culbertson, who ran the Shreveport and Bossier City locations when we went to the retreat. I don't think I met you, Justin. I think one of your kids was just born or something like that. Does that sound?
That was
bummed out because I had heard about you. So I was like,
yeah, that was when Blake was born, my middle child.
Yeah.
But to be honest, like I didn't want to go anyways because I didn't want to travel and be by myself.
Right.
So
and now like learning about what you said, like going from Waco to Austin is like, oh, that's not that bad. But you're like, my wife is about to have a child. Like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
So I knew about you, but that is how Justin and I like communicated through years and, became good buddies. I mean, I talked to Justin more than, I would say just as much as my own mom, who's like my mom's like my best friend. My wife is also my best friend. She'll listen to this. But
shout out Emily. Shout out.
Yeah, Emily, Dr. G. Still hasn't changed her name, but we always joke about that in our house. There's more things to change.
All good.
Yeah, but yeah, that is how I met Justin. So I just want to like briefly interject there and saw what you were doing and definitely giving like a blueprint. And it was interesting because like you said, like it all clicked where I was learning in New England, like everything was kind of done in different areas of the country. And then that's kind of where it came together was that 2017, 2018 area where you were talking about where like, hey, like we all need to, centralize this. Like it has to be a standard process. And like you were talking about giving that amazing customer service. And I mean, I remember the first time that I was told by my DM at that time, you got to start opening the door for customers. And I said, I love that idea. It's like you're welcoming into their home. I mean, anytime anyone entered our house, even when I just lived with my parents, I'd always make sure to greet them, whether I liked them or not, just because that's how I was raised. And so when I moved to Tyler with an ex-girlfriend, it was like everyone here loves fitness. Everyone loves family, and faith was huge. Like it's family, faith, fitness, food. Like it's a huge thing. And I mean, I am so happy that I moved to Tyler because that's where I met Emily, which we don't have to get into in this episode. But I did want to say that like I was very aware in Tyler, 2.5, 3 hours away, 3.5 from Waco, like everything that you were doing. But going back to what you said, like COVID really did hurt that period of time, which bummed me out because I thought I was going to be able to work with you a little bit closer when, eventually I moved out.
And the funny thing is like Waco and Tyler were always competing for like that top 3 spot, right? Like top 3 stores in the company, Colleen, Tyler.
Because that's just what you like. Yeah, you have to go after the big dogs and ask questions.
Yeah. Seekonk was up there too.
Yeah, Tony, if Tony listened to this, like Tony and the guys there, like I loved talking to them, even though I had left, and we would always talk about what they were trying to do. And I think Tony's one of the smartest guys, I mean, that I'd ever got to work with. He was so down to earth and cool. And I know you had met Tony and went up there.
Well, that's the invisible string theory here is all the parallels between just me and you, right? Yeah. So like I end up getting sent up to Massachusetts or whatever up there. Of course, I brought Megan with me, so she had just had.
By the way, we founded America. Just so
Okay,
everyone is on this, we founded.
perfect. So I go up there to, and just to throw this out there, like maybe a lot of you guys won't really understand like a lot of the things that we're talking about in regards to like the company, but really what we're just talking about, like our time there, and specifically like my experience and how that led to where I am now, because I wouldn't be where I am sitting today had it not been for my experiences with that company. But again, the invisible string theory, like I go up there to work with Brennan for a week, and I meet all the guys that you worked with prior and some of the people, and I know like all of that kind of fell apart with COVID and everything like that. But that was I had never been there before, and it was a very unique experience for me, and I enjoyed that. I got a kick out of working with the guy that arm wrestled. Max, yeah, super cool dude. Nobody could ever like break through to him, and I felt like to an extent I was able to break through to him, and that's kind of what got me pushed up to that level of almost being able to be at headquarters and working with Jerry and Dave, and based on Brennan telling Cody, the president at the time, like the experience of working with me and how it kind of changed some things, and so I get that experience. I come back, things go good for a while. College Station closes, Fort Hood closes. So now I've got only 2 stores. And the way that the model's set up is there's no DMs for only 2 stores. So they change the pay scale and say, hey, we're just going to put you back in Waco as the GM, which was cool at the time. I'm like, I got all these kids, like I could have more time now. But I started to just kind of get
3 kids by that point.
3 kids at that point. So I started to get kind of burnt. Megan got an opportunity to come out here to take a job that was kind of like her dream job with the university. So, long story short, I put in my month notice, and, with the we keep bringing up the invisible string theory, who ends up eventually taking over that district after I leave? This guy right here. Yeah, so it's just kind of ironic, the way that things work out. And obviously that's how you and I ended up working together, was because you had some questions about, you wanted to find out right away, like, who do I go and talk to so I can drive traffic?
Well, and like have the relationships, but also like go in there. I mean, I think that one of the first things I had to tell some of these owners was, hey, like I'm friends with Justin, and also he told me to personally come by. Like he's telling me to make these relationships, and still having the guidance from TC, and like him literally saying to me like, hey, like Justin knows that area, like you need to leverage that and lean into that. Like, yes, I am a Justin friend. I'm not here to like send people away. I'm here to filter, and I think one of the first things that TC said, and like you probably said the same thing, is like the best way to get in with people is join their community, like jump in, join their gym. And like Halo was one of the, just join the gym, even though I didn't live in Waco, but I had to live there. I had to stay out there so many weeks in a row that I was like, well, I might as well just become a member versus like an Anytime Fitness. There's nothing wrong with Anytime Fitness, but it's nice to be at a local gym that's owned by local people.
Yeah, I remember, because when we first started working together, you had memberships at like all the places. You're like, I don't care, I'll get a membership at Halo, I'll get a membership at Underground, whatever. Yep. But I think, again, it's just the irony is there, but the important thing to kind of take away from that is like Louis Simmons has this quote, and it's probably my favorite of all his quotes, in that, I didn't invent toilet paper, but I'm smart enough to use it. So it's like, I'm not trying to be Justin or anybody that came before him, just like I wasn't trying to be Jason Spears, who was there before me. Sure. I'm trying to be me, but I can definitely leverage some of these situations to make myself look better and to build relationships and kind of create my cornerstone. And that's where I look at where I am now and all the information that I have now and all the knowledge that I have. Listen, nobody invented, like, somebody had to invent the barbell bench press, right? But there's a million guys that have perfected how to push how far you can take the bench press, or how, Jason Brown didn't invent zone 2 cardio, but he looked at, this book right here, Ultimate MMA Conditioning, and he said, okay, there's some pieces of this that is conjugate and concurrent training. How can I take what these guys are doing, what Joel Jameson is doing with his athletes, and use that towards the general population, right? So I didn't create the whole zone 2 thing. Like other people really made that a big cornerstone of what they do. But I'm definitely going to use it because I want my people to be healthy and I want my people to get the best results. So that's like the segue of all this is like, especially I didn't invent toilet paper, but I'm smart enough to use it. It's like, I'm gonna turn every stone until I figure out, what's gonna be the best thing for my people. And that's an ever evolving, situation. So to kind of bring things up to speed, I now have left 5 Star, moved to Lexington, Kentucky. I have this incredible network back home in Texas and in Florida. But I go and I work for a company called New Health because I felt like I needed to just get to work. Like I'm like I can't sit here and not do anything. I still need to get to work.
I was joking, and surprisingly they weren't. They only do that when people come knock and ask if you have someone looking at your roof post hailstorm, but or car insurance. But you said like, hey, I'm not here to be like. I was like, hey, I'm not here to be Justin, and you said, hey, I'm not here to be Spears. It goes back to like I'm in the grocery store yesterday and I'm like bopping around and listening to my music, and it's like, I look like kind of a silly clown, and I feel like I've been, I joke with you, I'm your dumbest client, but also I've been so successful in the program because I take things as I'm not here to beat any other one of your clients. I could care less what weight they're doing or what reps. Like I hope that they're doing great, but I never ask because I'm just here to beat Dave and I'm here to have fun while doing it. And like that starts, like you said, like at the high school level where you said to those girls, like, hey, like you need to go up there and grip it and just go. Yeah. It's the same thing where in life or in the training program or what have you, I think you and I are very much aligned when it comes to if you're not having fun when you're doing something, whether it's loading and unloading the dishwasher to spending time with your kids to just driving to work every day, then you're not going to get the most out of it. And that mindset, like you said. So I really do think that that's something to hammer home for anyone who is listening, who knows us, who doesn't know who the hell we are, stumbled upon this by accident. You have to have fun when you do it. The process can be fun and it doesn't have to be a grind at all times. And I do think that in the past, and you had mentioned that company that we both worked for, at the times I was off the path where the grind was the grind. And now looking back, there were some really fun parts of the grind, specifically with TC. And then there were some really unfun parts of the grind that I'll just leave inside my head and not talk about. But I will say that is definitely something that is like the center of not only like this podcast, but also Justin as a person is like, we got to have fun. I always get those texts from you that say like, hey, you can do it. Like, just go do it. Like, why are you thinking about it? Like, you know you can do it. And then those, whether you believe it's big in your mind, when I get a text that says good work, it's 2 words, but it means so much to me. And I heart message every time, good work. I mean, you could just put the thumbs up. Writing good work to me means a lot. It's validation that I'm actually doing what you're asking me to do. And I know that we pay you to do it, to program it, but I'm paying you back with actually the trust and then me asking those questions. So I know I went off topic.
Well, I think with anybody, just to touch on that, like the problem is people don't ask why enough. Like, and that's something that I kind of picked up with 5 Stars. Like Charlie always would say, like, I want you to ask why, because that means that you're going through the processes in your mind of trying to understand what's happening versus like, yeah, I got it. Like he never wanted people that were just going to be do boys. Like he wanted people that were going to, go above and beyond the call of duty, so to speak, and be creative. And those ended up being the best people in the company. Yeah. But I take that and I say, just in your situation, like a lot of people are, even though online coaching has been out there for a while now, really COVID is what made it popular. A lot of people still find it hard to grasp the idea of the separation between an online coach and a personal trainer or an in-person coach or strength and conditioning coach, whatever. I don't personally like being called a personal trainer. I don't like it.
Personally.
Yeah. Coach is good, Justin's good, whatever. But I think that just in your situation, like a lot of people that don't work with anybody, specifically they don't work with anybody in person, they don't understand the concept of like the ability to be able to do more psychologically, right? Like, right. And I'll give you an example. Like, let's say I gave you belt squat marches, right? And I want you to belt squat march with 245s on each side, so 180 pounds. And then I want you to slap a medium orange band on there so there's constant tension when you're marching. And I say, you're going to march for 5 minutes, right? You get a minute and a half in, and everything is lit up. But it's not maximal. So what's going on right now, right? Are you breaking your body down to the point where, you're not going to be able to recover from it? No. You're barely even hitting flexion in anything except your ankle joint, right? Nothing else is anywhere near flexion because you're just marching back and forth. The mental aspect comes in there, which is where everybody misses the ball on conjugate training. The mental aspect of enhancing a special strength, which in that situation could be your glutes, your hips, your hamstrings, your GPP, whatever. There's going to be a reason for it, but it burns and it sucks. And if you don't believe that you can do 5 minutes, then you're just going to stop, whether it be from boredom or from just excruciating pain. The same thing with the reverse hyper, right? Like, I need you to do 50 reps with 180 pounds on the reverse hyper. You're like, dude, I can't breathe. My glutes are on fire. My low back's on fire. My hamstrings on fire. But you can do it. It's not maximal. It's not above what you're capable of doing, right? So it's all psychological. People don't really understand how to push. And so,
too, though, it's asking you when you get a new week of training. I do this every Sunday, or maybe it's Monday morning. I'm looking at every exercise, whether it's a new block or an old block. Oh, what has he changed? Should I rewatch the videos just in case? Because I don't like to ask a lot of questions during training. I end up doing it because I get really pumped up about it. And obviously you're training at the same time. So sometimes, I have to just make a decision, which I think you always say, like, what you're doing. Like, why are you asking this question? But go ahead. I'm going to answer you again. But like you said, like, if you don't believe you can do it, then, you probably won't do it. And that's where it comes into play with, like, for me personally, is the warm-ups and the cool-downs. Like, I will put in 60% warm-up, 60% cool-downs when it needs to be 100 if you're going to get the best out of it. And it's in person, you can't lie to someone's face, right? But online, it's giving that the why, like you said, hey, well, what's the importance of the dynamic warm-up, or what's the importance of the cool-down? Well, do you want to be tight all the time, all day? Do you not want to be warmed up when you go hit 425 on the box squat yesterday for 3? Like, is that truly what you want? And well, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt myself. I'm a dad. Okay, well, go do your damn warm-up then.
Yeah. Well, people like to skip that stuff, but then they wonder why, it's like, if I give you, why the hell are you giving me 200 reps on band tricep extensions? And like, the answer is simple, and you probably understand what the answer is, but it's just annoying and it burns and it hurts. But ultimately, like, you have to build capacity in your ligaments and your joints to match the capacity of your muscles. If not, what happens? You start tearing stuff, or you start getting tendonitis and your joints ache and all that kind of stuff. So there's a reason for everything. And I think with you, there's always a fine line of, like, being helpful and then being an enabler. And I have to find, like, I don't want to say, like, every time you send me a video, like, first of all, I ask you to send me videos, so that's not even an issue. But when you say, like, here's 3 reps with, 325 on bench, and the first rep is slow, but then you pound out this, I'm like, okay, I know just from looking at this and understanding, like, you from a mental and physical perspective, like, you can do 10 more pounds. You're just kind of unsure of it. But me saying, I know you can do it, it then makes it easier for you to do that. And I think a lot of people just lack that confidence, but they also lack time in their body. Like, they haven't done it enough to, where with me, I know I can feel a weight, and I know right away I'm going to be good for 8 or I'm going to be good for 3. Yeah. And there's going to be no variance there, because the last thing I want to do is, like, I don't like failing a lift, so I won't push it because I don't have anybody to spot me, so on and so forth. But again, there's a fine line there. And you just have to understand, like, what's the thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah, well, going back to, like, what you said, like, you're pushing it. I kind of lost my train of thought because I was listening to what you said. But I would say you're unsure of it. That's where it was. It was like, oh, I'm unsure if I can get this. Like, well, how long have you been preparing for it? And then I do think it does go back to, like, I started weightlifting when I was, like, 14, 15 in high school. And we grew up in a very diverse area. My mom and my dad, I've never seen my mom lift ever. She said she used to like run back in the day, and then like high school. And then my dad would like do weightlifting, but like I did it with him like a few times, but like we actually like argued about it because he like touched my barbell, and I was like, hey, like don't touch my bar like when I'm under the bar. Like I'm like actually, I don't know how you feel, but like I think that you don't touch the bar unless someone is going down, unless they're decelerating.
Yeah,
right?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and like he didn't like get what I was saying only because like I was someone who like would like look to muscle and fitness magazines. Like I would see these gigantic superhero like guys. Like I love looking at old videos of Lou Ferrigno, Arnold. I mean, who's the other guy there? The I can't remember. That would always Franco.
Yeah, Franco Colombo, Sergio
Yeah.
Oliveira.
Yeah, like, watching those kind of guys, I was like, wow, like I want to be big like them because then I could be confident. And like I'm the biggest I've ever been, like strongest I've ever been. I think my confidence has gone up probably like 10%. Like it's still kind of not where it needs to
Yeah.
be. And I hope to God that like my son like sees that like I'm a confident man and he can be confident. I'm trying to be more confident, for our family and for my wife too.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, like you're a little unsure of it. I think it just goes back to like I just don't think I can do it because I'm still that little kid that's in the gym, Taunton High. That it's this gym sucked. I mean, you were talking about Georgia. Like I was thinking, like my high school had some bad funding, and like we didn't have the best coaches, we didn't have the best intelligence when it came to that, but also like nobody's there telling you can do it. They were just like kind of yelling at you, like, hey, like I'm gonna read the newspaper while you like kind of do it, and like so my first coach was me, essentially like with weightlifting, and I mean you can imagine how difficult that is at 16, 17 years old, watching bodybuilding.com videos of a super jacked guy like yourself doing an exercise, and I went, okay, that's the only way I know how to. I mean, there was no videos on YouTube at that time, on like in like 2008, 2009 to actually show you good form. And maybe I just looked in the wrong place, so just you said like it's unsure, but it's also like at a very young age you find someone that's your mentor, like who can help. You're my mentor to this day when it comes to that, but also like setting a good example for your family, and like that's who I want to be. So I just keep on asking questions.
Yeah. I mean, it's always important to have a high level understanding of things. And there's people that, from a pride standpoint, they don't want to ask. They don't want to know why. They just want to do it.
Well, that's the level they're going to hit, and they're going to top.
They're gonna peak right here. Versus like the people that I'm in constant communication with, they're like everyone wants to like, well, how the heck are they doing that? And it's like it's communication. And it's their willingness to be successful. They'll do whatever it takes. And I think a lot of people just get stuck in the mindset of like, I don't want to have to do that. It's like, well, then you're going to be what you always got.
Right. I want to go back. So you moved to Kentucky. You're at New Health. Mm-hmm. Megan got her dream job. You said at the university, which is awesome. Now, what are you doing at New Health? Because I mean, I know about this, but let's just tell people.
They threw me in a terrible store that was doing like $100 a day. And with no foot traffic, when the expectation was for me to be like a corporate liaison to go around to all the different stores and try and teach them, a little bit of process and how we can help people. And hindsight's 2020. Looking back on it, like, they've all the stores have closed now, so there was just some bad business. I ended up quitting because the straw was, and I'm not throwing names out there, but I was told to try to sell products that were 2 years out of date. And I disagreed with that wholeheartedly. And I said, you know what, this is enough. Like I already had clients at this point. I had like 5 or 6 clients. So in fact, I remember bringing you on while I was working in store.
Yeah. I remember calling you. I think you were there and you were like, hey, tough times right now.
Same thing with Colt. And, fast forward to, we'll call it December of 21, right before Christmas, I quit. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I went and met with the owner in person. I didn't want to do it over the phone. I'm like, look, dude, this is my issue. If you're not going to be flexible on these things and let me try to make some changes, because I'll own whatever you want me to own, but I need to be able to make these changes and have a little bit of freedom. And he wasn't about it. Fair enough. Like his model was different. They weren't trying to they weren't trying to grow or expand as in terms of like storefronts and stuff. And so I'm like, you know what, I don't want to waste any more of either one of our times. And I said, I'm good. I'm gonna pass and I'm gonna leave. And that was the end of that. And at that point, it was all on me. You know, you can go back and look and see the post of when I first started and see the progression of how I got better with social media and all the different things. But naturally, um, like when you reached out to me about, you know, references for different gyms and different people in the community, like naturally that's where I started. I took the things that I learned with 5 Star and started to just try to implement them best I could into my business. And that meant that I had to start reconnecting with people that I left back in Central Texas and talking back and forth, chatting, but then also leaning on other people that were in the business and the community of online coaching and making friends that way. And I've made a lot of friends that I've never even met. You know, specifically like looking at what Jason Brown was doing and try to, even though I wasn't working with ex CrossFitters, I was trying to do somewhat of a model of what he was doing, talking with him a little bit, talking with different people, and just trying to get as much free information as I possibly could. And ultimately, what I found was the best way to, you know, start in online coaching was just to do it and figure it out as you go. You know, you start off charging whatever because you don't know your own worth at that point. You're just getting started, and then it kind of grows from there. And
you want to share what your lowest client was ever charged?
I mean, I started off at $50 a month.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
I just I
feel at any level, to be honest, is $50 a month is incredibly cheap.
Yes. So, well, I mean, there's people that charge $10,000 a year for coaching. So, and that's I mean, that's mid level. There's people that are way above
Sure.
that. I'm nowhere near that, but
I mean, $6 a year is like two trips to the grocery store now.
Yeah. So that's where I started. And then that grew, obviously. And as I got more confident, I got some before and afters, and I started to lean on some people to help me and make some posts and all that kind of stuff. Like things just kind of started going that 5 Star beginning route of ambassadorship and growing and growing and growing. And, you know, the one thing that at first I was really confused about was why didn't more guys want to work with me? Like, why was I having such a tough time getting guys, but I, you know, had a ton of women? Part of it was naturally the network that I had in Waco was like the customer percentage there was 70-30 women to men. Right. So my network was, my network was women. So, and then I latched on to Kat. She reached out to me one day. Hey, I want to know what you're doing. Boom. You know, her network obviously is very expansive. So she's still one of my clients to this day, but you know, she made a ton of posts and just was very open to helping me grow because she saw the value in what I was doing in just weeks. She was getting better. She's like, holy crap, like everybody needs to know about this. So that's a big part of how I grew, and I can never thank her enough for that. But that's a big reason why I got so many women. And it's probably something that also kind of hurts me from being like super big, is because women don't view me, that don't know me, as the person like that works with women. They just see a jacked guy that's strong and that does a bunch of crazy stuff. Like they don't see it that way. So hopefully that stigma over time will go away and I'll be able to kind of enhance that. But it just kind of grew from there. And I can't really explain the full explosion as of like why, except that I started doing weight loss challenges, which again was something that I implemented at 5 Star that worked well. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to try it. What's the worst that can happen? Everybody says no. Right. And that became almost like a system for me to get more before and afters and to get more clients and to grow and to help more people. Cause that was like the most important thing, is like, if I just help enough people, it's going to grow on its own. I don't have to be a salesman. Like I don't have to do anything, which I don't want to do. I don't even like telling people how much it costs because I feel like they get so excited about the thing. And then if I feel like I'm letting them down if it's not within their price range. And it never bothers me if someone says no or they can't afford it, or like I understand. I think ultimately people that's just somebody that's not ready, because you can afford whatever. You don't go. No one goes and buys a $50,000 car and says I can afford this. They're not paying it completely outright. They're paying $500 a month for a car payment.
you can go down to HEB, right? Or, local Costco or wherever you like to shop and say, oh, I really can't wait to make dinner tonight. My wife could say, hey, I can't wait to make dinner. And then I say, hey, it's going to be $150 to buy our groceries for, 3 days because we're going to cook dinner for a bunch of people. Oh, we can't afford that. Well, I mean, shoot, like we're having the people over, so we got to pay the money. So, I mean, you
If you
can't.
have a family of 5 and you go to Costco for a month worth of just bulk food, not what you get at the grocery store with bulk food, you're going to drop $800 to $1,000. So, affordability, it's more about where you are and your ability to be ready to make a change. It's not pretty much across the board. There are some people that they're like, I really cannot afford that. And I would still debate with them that they could, but I'm not that guy. Like, if someone says like, I can't afford what you do right now, fantastic. Keep me in mind later on if you get to a better place. But the reality for most of those people is they can't afford it. They just don't believe, or they're not ready to fully invest in making that decision to.
The other thing that comes with it too is, okay, I'm signing up with Justin now, and you're doing you're still doing nutrition with most of your clients, correct? Yeah. So, I sign up with you and then I go, okay, cool. I'm so ready, to lose that 20 pounds before summer hits. And you go, hey, Dave, like, so you got to stop eating crumble once a week, which I haven't been recently. I'm just like making something up. Anyway, why are you eating crumble every week? Well, it's my treat with my wife. Okay, well, you're investing time and money into me. That's one of the things that has to go. You going to Starbucks and getting 4 cake pops every Sunday? That's got to stop too. Oh, well, shoot, why not? Or why can't I get the popcorn at Target while I'm over there? I mean, I think we both know it's going to be hurtful to your progress. And like you said, it's an argument that I don't want to even have with the people that I coach. Why would you want to argue with someone about something that they're not ready to do? If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. But you can break down expenses and say, hey, you spent $300 at Starbucks this year. Like, that's money that we can take away. You spent money going to the movies. Maybe you don't need to go to the movies every single week. You probably go like once every 2 weeks. You're going to these high-end restaurants. Probably could go like once a month.
We can go down that rabbit hole as deep as you want when it comes to like people.
They have to be able to get there.
Yeah, I'm not here to like help people budget. You know what I mean? Like, your budget is your budget, right? Like, so the reality is, like, I have 2 people that are going to start with me in May, or excuse me, in June, because it is May now. That they truly right now, they're just like, budget wise, it's tough for them. They know they want to make a decision, but they have built up so much debt in other areas that they're not able to drive into the position to make a change for themselves because they're prioritizing other things. So that's when I say, like, people really truly aren't that saying they can't afford it. They're just not ready or bought into, being able to make a change. It's not at this point, and doing it for as long as I've done it now, it's not about can they do it? Can he do it for me? What he did for all these other people? Because I've done it for multitudes of different people. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not about the percentage anymore. It's literally mostly about, like, okay, he's asking me to invest in X amount and I make it realistic for everybody. Like, I can do installments or whatever. Like, I try to make it realistic for them. Like, I'm not becoming a millionaire this way. Like, this is just what I get out of this is time. I get time to be able to do me, and I get time to be there for my kids. Right. So that's the biggest financial thing for me, is the biggest reward is the time that I get. Because it's always been in the back of my mind to be, how cool would it be to, like, a dream of mine, how cool would it be to be able to work from home, and your job is to train and get other people better and all these different things, but remotely. And so, to kind of put that whole thing into perspective, when people are talking about, affordability, right? Like, is this affordable? Is that affordable? Like, they're not really taking into consideration, the other things that they have going on. This is just something that kind of seems like, well, when I have some disposable income, I can afford to work with you. And I'm like, this isn't disposable. This is your life. Either you want to stay the way that you are, or you want to make a change. The people that change and the people that open up that trust, and I understand that it's hard to trust somebody, especially somebody like me that they don't know, that's 1,000 miles away. Like, I get that it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around, but ultimately those people just aren't ready to prioritize themselves. And so that's
you want to measure everything you're eating? Do you want to, or make healthier choices and instead of cooking at home, instead of stopping at a fast food chain? Are you gonna want to get up early and hit that walk before your kid wakes up and your spouse is in bed? Or are you gonna want to put in the time instead of sitting in front of the television with your children, maybe taking them on a walk and teaching them that those good habits? But you also said like affordability too. I mean, it goes like you can afford a very small gym membership that has everything. I want a safety squat bar in that garage, but it's not in our budget. And then what do we do in the meantime? You said to me, hey, eventually that's what we're going to get. But for now, you have a barbell and we're going to use it because you pay a monthly fee to go in the garage. So it's little things like that. But I cut you off there.
No, I didn't know, and I didn't build my garage gym overnight. That's 5 years of investing,
and it's never going to be done because you're always going to find something that you want.
It's easier now, right? When when you get more money, you start to make more money, you can invest more in that kind of stuff, and those are my toys. Like they're less expensive than if you're a car hobbyist or a motorcycle hobbyist and you're buying parts that are $600 a pop. It's like.
And you got two members, right? Your wife is in there too.
Yeah. So, and eventually, and the kids like to play out there and stuff too. So it's like, to me, again, it's all about the prioritizing of what's important to you. And again, like when I have this conversation with people, I don't push anybody. I'm not like, hey, well, how much can we afford? Like, no, how desperate am I going to sound if I ask somebody like, well, how much you can afford? Like I had somebody drop off today because their renewal was it was too much for them right now in the stage that they're at. I could have easily said, hey, well, how much can you afford? No, that's going to degrade what it is that I do, and it makes me look desperate, and I'm not. Like I don't want that for anybody. If it's not a top level priority for them, and that's okay if it's not, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Then it's just the timing is not right for them. And I always end it with like, I'm always going to be here to help you if you have questions. Like I'm always available for everybody. I stay in contact with all the people that I've worked with for the most part, if they will communicate back to me. But, there's just always going to be a situation or a point in time in your life where priorities need to change. And I hate that people don't prioritize that. But I will tell you, like my best people that hit hard times, they will continue to prioritize the training program within their budget because it's important. They know how important it is to them.
Yeah.
They'll take whatever, like hey, I'm not going to do this because I need to be able to afford this, right? It's prioritizing. That's it.
The other thing too is like, even though I know, I would say a fair amount of what you know, but definitely not to your level, is I still have my wife signed up with you because it's good accountability for her. And she knows that if I was her coach, she would probably call me a dick. Like she said, every time we're in there and I'm spotting her and I'm critiquing her, she says, you're one real mean coach. I don't have to hear this from Justin. And that's why I like Justin, because she just goes in the app and she logs it. But also, going through her pregnancy, and that's like, hey, like she really can't do a lot of weight training right now with her job as a veterinarian. And it's like, well, what can we do to make sure she's still doing something to prepare her for this, childbirth? And her coming back on, and while she's building her pelvic floor, I mean, that was just, for me, like, I was incredibly, like, just happy that you were able, and thankful that you were able to do that for her, because that's past my level of understanding and knowledge, where now she feels so much better. And now, she's out there and she says, if I don't do this, I'm disappointed Justin, and I don't want to disappoint him. I don't want to disappoint myself and my son. And she's doing those farmer carries, right? And I said, well, trying to make sure that, I said, do you want me to tell you the why? And she said, no, you've already told me the why. And I'm sure Justin has too. You probably told her, hey, this is what we're doing. We're doing this because of this reason, to make sure that, she is healthy, and this whole abdominal area and the upper back is healthy, because she is carrying him around all the time, and, making sure that, he's adequately, fed, and just playing with him, and he's getting bigger every day. So, I mean, it's just having that ability to not only have the knowledge, but also someone who will keep you accountable and call you out like, hey, why are you not doing your lifts? And now her big thing is, I just want to do something every day, because then I know I can get the Justin workouts done. And like icing on the cake is like going on a walk, or, going to play pickleball perhaps after this. And like, she's jacked up about it. She loves like the fact she's doing it. And I told her, the reason why we're able to go on those walks and push a little bit more, and the reason we're able to go play pickleball and have a little bit more fun every time, is because you're doing the strength workouts that you really sometimes have no gas for, but you still find that fuel somehow after work.
That's the double-edged sword, or the catch-22 of online coaching, is that you can't explain that to people, what you just said, and get them to understand like that's a big value. The ultimate value in working with somebody that's an online coach, and it's not just me, like the good ones that are out there, is like the result, right? So if I said like, okay, so Dave, you're 230 pounds, right? And I said, Dave, in 6 months, no, excuse me, in tomorrow, right, I'm going to take off by doing this one thing. I'm going to peel 30 pounds of fat from your body. You're not going to lose any muscle. You're going to be the most shredded you've ever been in your life. You're going to be the best that you've ever looked in your life, and you're going to be able to maintain that for the rest of your life. We're going to do that in one day. And I said, but it's going to cost you $4,000.
I mean, how much does it value? Yeah, how much do you value the losing the 30 pounds? I mean, you have to budget it out and say, $4,000 seems like a lot, the price sticker, but you're not paying that 50 grand for the car. Like you said, you're paying monthly installments.
So I'm just saying, like, I'm throwing, it's not even that I charge that much. I'm just saying, like, if that tangible outcome for you is to be just diced and peeled, and you couldn't do it on your own, and you knew that, right, you would say, yeah, if I know that that's a fact and you can do that and I can have it tomorrow, here's the money. Sure. If somebody said, hey, I tomorrow you will bench 500 pounds and you will keep that because that's what I'm chasing, and you will keep that for the remainder of your life, but you have to give me $5 grand. I'm going to go figure out, how I can come up with $5,000. Like, I'm going to figure it out because that's what I want. Sure. And it's important to me. Right. So I think if you now look at the even bigger picture, and you take somebody that is, they're sick, they're tired, they have no confidence, they have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, they have type 2 diabetes, right? They're checking all the boxes of like an early death, right? They have all the comorbidities of a metabolic disorder. They're 100 pounds overweight. Okay.
Yeah.
I am going to tell that person, let's hypothetically, I can remove all of those things, and I'm going to take that 100 pounds and I'm going to take that away from you tomorrow. You have to give me $5 grand. What do you think they're going to say? Of course.
Oh yeah.
You mean I don't have to do anything? You're just going to take all that fat?
Yeah.
Of course they would do it. Of course. But you can't explain that to somebody and help them understand what's coming a year from now, or 6 months from now, or 2 years from now. Yeah. All I have is my word, and then the evidence of before and afters.
And looking up too, and like having that humble, like having humility, but also like knowing that it's a long game. Like at 33, and like, talking to like someone like my buddy JP Carroll, definitely you, like taking a 5-pound PR and just being so excited about it. I've always been super underwhelmed. Like when I was a kid, I'd be like, oh yeah, I hit a PR, whatever. And then like you get 3 years ago when we start, and it's like, oh, I'm deadlifting with no pain now. So I'm squatting more than I've ever squatted. I just got married and I'm in probably the best shape of my life. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I want to be in the best shape of my life when I'm taking all of these photographs with my wife and her family's there and my family's there. And like, we don't know how long family members are going to be around. I want to look good. I want my wife to be happy with how the photos turned out. And then years from now, when little Theo, our son, is looking back and go, Dad, you look a little small here. You're looking more jacked now. Like, I want him to say that versus, God, what the hell happened? You used to look good here. Now you look like a big old blob. I mean, I hope he doesn't say that about me. Yeah. So like you take all that stuff away. Why would you? But also explaining the why too. Like, hey, like it's gonna take time. Like not the why, but the timeline behind it. Of, hey, Dave, like I can get you a 10-pound PR, but it might take you a year and a half. And like you just have to kind of deal with that. And it goes back to the trust, like you said. It really does go back to trusting them. And also, like, even asking the why and you explaining every time and centering me back to the earth. Because sometimes my head is in the clouds of, I can hit more and more and more. No, let's take what we have and move on.
I think for me personally, like I set out when I turned 40, the goal, my lifetime goal, one of the lifetime goals that I've had in terms of training was, like, I want to bench 500, right? When you look at like, my all-time PR is 450. Like people are like 50 pounds, that's not that much. You should be able to get there in a certain amount of time. And keep in mind, like, I'm doing this like in the best way that I can. Like I'm not taking a bunch of stuff to push to a certain level and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to do this from like a health perspective too. Yeah. So I'm really having to use all the strength training tools that I know and all the tricks that you can, and work on all the small weak points in order to drive that up, right? But I didn't sit there and say, I'm turning 40 in 6 months, I want to bench 500. No. What I said was, what is realistic that I can gain with all the ups and downs and the sicknesses and the little injuries and the time constraints? What is a realistic amount of time that it's going to take for me? Because at the time, maybe I was benching 420 at the time when I was 40. So what's realistic from amount of time? And I said, okay, I want to get there by the time I'm 45. People say, 5 years? Are you freaking nuts? And it's like, look, dude, when you're at that expert advanced level, it takes time. So I said, I need to do 10 or however many, 6-8 pounds a year on my max until I get to 45. And then, I should be within striking distance. Right now I'm probably like in the 440, 445 range. And I'll be 43 in July. So I have time, but I've spread the workout over time, which Louis used to talk about this and how you look at the training cycle of a weightlifter, which is 4 years, right? Those guys work for 4 years to get a 20-pound PR on their clean and jerk or their snatch, right? So why the hell should you, if it took you 10 years to gain 50 pounds, why do you think it's going to, yes, you can lose 50 pounds very fast, but why do you expect it to happen in 2 months? You know what I mean? It's like, there's a allotment of time that is necessary. This is such a cool opportunity to be able to have another way to be able to reach people. I'm going to share this thing around to as many people as I can. I'm going to share it to my socials. I know Dave will do that too. Hopefully it doesn't actually end up being 2 hours and 45 minutes, because this is what happens when people get me talking about training and doing different things, because I can talk forever.
Yeah.
But I know in the future we're going to try to keep that to like 45 minutes or something like that for the sake of people's attention spans.
Maybe a couple part, maybe a 3-part.
But the origin story, it's not something that you can piece in 30 minutes. Like, I'm just not one of those people that's like, yeah, my life is just bland. There is so many things that we didn't talk about that we could split into different podcasts of all the dumb shit that I've done growing up and all the things that I've experienced. We're going to have some awesome guests. I have a close friend of mine who was also a client for a while. That's an 8-year NFL vet with the Baltimore Ravens that we can get on here. And he's big into leadership, and so he will be a great guest. I've got tons of people, including clients, that we're going to have on as guests. And so hopefully we can kind of grow this thing up a little bit to where we're we're going to try and do it weekly. Things happen time to time, but we're gonna block time to be able to do this kind of stuff. And I think it's going to be a really exciting, new, interesting way for us to get maybe the average person's perspective on all the things that are going on in the industry, because we're going to be talking about all the different things that are happening in the fitness world, and we're going to be talking about programming, and we're going to be talking about nutrition, and I'm sure we'll talk about GLP-1 peptides and supplements and, hormones. We're going to talk about all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that's coming on the docket that, quite frankly, I wanted to do the whole blogging thing for a while, and it was fun, but typing just isn't really my thing. And so it's a lot easier for me to just talk about all these things. But, we're going to talk about all the different training modalities and zone 2 cardio and strength training, and how this can be implemented with the average everyday person that wants to improve their life.
Yeah, definitely. And then before we close this out, I mean, I think I said it to you in the beginning, like, I'm just super thankful to go on the journey. And when I kind of came to you after watching you do another interview on another podcast, believe that this is going to be incredibly like successful, and if nothing else, a very fun passion project. That's, you know, we're not out here to become millionaires, like you said. Like, certainly not with this. This is on our own time. Justin has a ton of clients that he has to handle every day, and I have another job, and of course our family here, so need to, you know, attend to that. But I mean, this is a long time coming, and I'm super thankful, and whatever comes of it is going to be a positive for me. With that said, the Conjugate Dad Podcast, episode 1 wraps. We're going to cut this up maybe into a few episodes, and if not, then you have 3 hours to listen to it and put it on double speed so you can cut out all the ums and the uhs that I have.
Yeah, good luck to Dave having to edit all this stuff, because it's not for me. That was the main reason why I didn't want to do this, was because the editing stuff is just not going to be in my wheelhouse at all.
It's fun. You can spend quick story, I will say, I spent the day that I got my license in high school, I drove to the high school by myself. It was the first time I was by myself in the car, of course, getting your license. I was not in school, but still drove to the TV studio, worked on a editing for, I think, our football banquet. That was the next day. I think I spent 3 hours on it, and all of a sudden it was time for everyone to leave the school, and I actually had to leave. I think I got like maybe 2 minutes done within that 3 hour period because I was working on the highlights so much. So it is not the funnest of job for most people, but it's definitely fun for me. So thanks for listening, and we hope to have you back on next episode.
Thanks, guys.